this agenda on Wednesday, so that we can each case will take 1 day, and then we'll have plenty of time for discussion and also poster viewing. And the fourth one is our CAPEX. And our ITM scientists will lead the discussion, and also this is the brief agenda for it. For the very last day, Friday, we don't have a very fixed agenda yet, but at least we will have a breakout discussion between case leaders and us, some of the organizing committee members, to summarize our workshop, and also will provide recommendations for future workshop contents or for future modeling research. So that is my quick presentation. How do I unshare? Did I unshare it?
Yeah, sir, you have
Sandy?
already unshared. Yes, yes, it's unshared.
It's unshared? Okay,
Yes.
great. And Harris, would you raise your hand so that you will be on top of our list? So
Yes.
yeah, then everybody can find two of you easily if they have any question.
Yes.
So this is my quick run through of the International Cloud Modeling Workshop history. And now I'll leave it to Harris and Sandeep. Do you have anything wants to mention before we move on?
Yeah, yeah. So I see that lot of you are stuck at on like that window, like that entry point. Please press G so that you can pass other participants and enter that room. You press G and forward. Okay, so once you press G, you can pass that person. So no need to Please press G and enter and take your place, please, because many people are populated on that window, entry point. Yes.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
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 Press
Please,
G. Press
leave
G.
the entry point open. Yes.
Yeah. Press G so that you can enter and take your place. Okay.
Yeah. For
Yes.
anybody
Yes.
that's currently in front of the entry point, please make it open to others.
Others.
At
Yes.
least I can see Chunzong is kind of very close to the entry point, and if you can
Yeah.
get in,
Get in.
as Erich mentioned, press G will help you move, right?
Yeah. So for like pressing G will like you can pass that person if you can go
Okay.
ahead. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Great.
Okay. Yes, I'm done.
All right. Thank you for the trick, and I didn't know it before, so that's very helpful. And also, as everybody sitting here, right here in the room, but after our break time or our poster viewing time, you have the chance to visit a poster when you get out of the room and then going upward, and you will find the poster room, so you can get in and view posters. So many of those introduction or instructions have been listed in the document. If you still have issues, please let Harish and Sandeep know, and they can help you. Then I think I almost finished all the items for this opening session, and I think it will be nice to open it up for our participant if they have any specific questions. We can, as moderator, we can spotlight or unspotlight you. But if you want to ask any question, please raise your hand. All right, I didn't see many. I didn't see any hands. It seems like you handle the platform really well. It's great that we have at least 88, 89 people here.
Yeah, and
And
all. Sorry to interrupt. Okay, if somebody, if they are finding difficult to raise their hand, you can press 6 so that they will automatically raise their hand. Okay, press 6 so you people can raise your hand. Okay, so yeah, so many people are raising their hands. See,
okay,
okay, so there are some shortcuts. Okay, so once you raise your hand, we can spotlight that person, and then you can speak. Okay,
Does
and
anyone want to try to be spotlighted? For instance, let's see. We still have hands on. Let me
and again,
spotlight.
yeah, again press 6 so that you will that option will go of raising hand. Yeah,
Okay, I
yeah.
think I have Avinash. So I'll spotlight you so you can say something.
Avinash, you are mute.
Please
You're
unmute your
mute.
speaker mic.
Unmute yourself. Yes.
Yeah, I think
Hello, Avinash.
Avinash still muted. Okay, then let's move on. Unspotlight Avinash, and I'll try to spotlight someone wants to speak. You can raise your hand, and I can give you the spotlight, so you can ask questions and you can talk to everyone in the room once you are spotlighted.
Yes.
If you want to just talk to the people that surrounding you, then you can see them around you. Then you will have a conversation in a smaller group that won't impact others. So this is really like the real conferencing experience. So yeah, thanks to our ITM colleagues to provide this platform. Okay, we have about 7 minutes before we start our first session, and since we have these kind of several minutes left, you're welcome to walk around, but please come back before the 13 UTC, so we can start our case discussion then. Now, for me, I will try to go out and look around and see if I can find some familiar faces and talk to them. And see you in 5 minutes here. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, voice. Can you hear me?
Hi, hello.
Hello.
Who is talking?
This is Harish.
It's you. I see. I don't know.
Shinichiro, you wanted to talk to me?
Yes, I'm talking to you, Wojciech. Hello.
Okay, good. I think you are right behind me. Am I right or close to me? Okay. Yeah. So I'm learning this game. I told you I don't like it, but I'm learning.
Yeah, yeah. Me too.
अभी हो गया है सबका।
अच्छा सबका हो गया ना।
हाँ हाँ, अभी आप 6:30 बजे से शुरू होगा फिर से।
अरे
हरीश का
हरीश
हैंड
तुम्हारा
रेज हैंड रेज
हैंड रेज है 6 दबाओ।
अरे
मैंने उनको बोला गया है हैंड रेज करने के लिए।
यस यस
अच्छा की
यस।
हाँ, सही है सही है।
अरे ये शॉर्टकट
ठीक
मैंने
है।
अभी आधे घंटे पहले ही हरीश को बताया है।
अरे बड़ी बात भाई, बहुत बढ़िया गुप्ता।
यस।
Saurabh, can you hear me? Please move towards the ICMW workshop using Preetam, please move towards ICMW workshop. Saurabh, please move towards the ICMW workshop, which is upwards. Workshop using your arrow keys. It's upwards. Hi, can you hear me? Please move upwards towards the ICMW workshop.
Hello, Sandeepan.
No,
Yes.
tell me.
So I have closed the doors like to panel discussion and icebreaker. Now nobody can go inside. Otherwise,
Okay.
it was
Yeah.
difficult, right? People are
Yeah.
going. Yes.
Yeah.
Now I have closed. Okay.
Okay.
Please proceed.
In this room, I cannot announce.
Just a minute.
Vote and then announce.
Yes, fine. Abhi, yours.
Kabhi.
Okay, now you're spotlighted. You can.
But I cannot unspotlight myself.
I'll do that. Once we go inside now, I'll do that.
No, Sandeep. Once we go inside, we can't unspotlight him. We need to come to that room, outside that room, and then unspotlight him.
Please go to the oral presentation room. Everyone, please.
Sandeep.
Harish,
Yes, Mercy.
has it started or not?
Not. Okay, it will start in maybe 2 minutes. Yes.
2 minutes. Okay, fine.
Yes.
Please go to oral presentation room.
Sandeep.
Yes.
Should I remove that symbol, if the phone symbol which you see in that oral presentation room? Because if someone press X, I don't know.
That is a problem. Yes. Maybe you should.
I don't know what to do. Yeah.
We can add it immediately,
Sandeep,
right?
please unspotlight myself.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
Otherwise, it will create problem.
Sandeep, I will reduce activation distance.
Fine.
Yes. Okay.
Yes. Sure.
अभी कोई आने वाला नहीं है ना? Should I also go to oral presentation room?
Wait.
अरे भाई अंदर सब कुछ चल रहा है, मुझे पता नहीं चल रहा है ना.
Very much for attending the International Cloud Modeling Workshop Day 1, and today's case emphasis on the model intercomparison of the Pi chamber simulation. My name is Cici Chen, and Steve Kruger and I will be the co-leader for the discussion. So I'm bringing up the agenda for the case discussion. After the review, Professor Raymond Shaw will give a keynote speak on the Pi chamber, and we will take a short break. After that, we'll have 50 minutes to let the case participants to give a brief summary of their model setup, and optionally they can show one or two highlighted results from their case, and we'll have 5 minutes to talk and 2 minutes Q&A. So I will use a timer, and at the end of 7 minutes, I will remind the speaker. And then we will have a 10 minutes break, and Steve and I will lead the discussion, and everyone can take part and ask questions. And we have 20 minutes-ish at the end for the poster viewing. And I think people can stay there as long as you like, since the platform will be open 24/7. So I think Lulin gave a very brief introduction on the platform. In case you are the first time user, I just introduce some of the functions. If you want to speak, since you are not automatically a spotlighter, you have to raise your hand by clicking this emoji face, and then click this. So the moderator will see you and make you a spotlighter. It's like hand you the microphone so everyone can hear you. And you can also chat in the left panel to ask your questions. I guess the moderator will also help to raise the question for you. And for the speakers, from the case participants, you will need to walk to the speaker location in order to be a spotlighter and make everyone hear and share the screen. And here is the screen sharing button at the bottom. So here is I will give you a brief case overview. So the motivation of this Pi chamber simulation is that in the cloud modeling world, cloud aerosol turbulence interactions in fine scales are not well understood. And on the one hand, cloud chamber measurements are variable for comparing to simulations, given its well-characterized boundary conditions, controlled environment, and the detailed macrophysics and the thermodynamics property. On the other hand, high-resolution models provide detailed information that is challenging to obtain by measurements. So in the long run, comparing these results of the model to laboratory measurements will help us to verify physics in the model, and the very well-validated models in return can be used to better understand the detail of the physics. And the first step to achieve this ultimate goal is to figure out how each model performs. So we would like to have this comparison of Pi chamber. Here's a diagram of the Michigan Technology University's Pi chamber. I think Raymond will give a more detailed overview. So basically, we will simulate the cuboid geometric cloud chamber and to look at the physics process inside this space. So we have shared the case description. We are focusing on mainly two base cases. So for today's discussion, the emphasis will be solely on the steady state case. In this case, the aerosols are constantly injected with prescribed injection rates to form a steady state size distribution, as well as steady state thermal and turbulent environment. And then we would like to compare those steady state statistics among the model members. And here is the diagram of the Pi chamber setup. I guess Steve can give a brief introduction for this slide. Steve, can you? I couldn't hear you, Steve.
I wasn't prepared for this.
Oh,
Okay.
if you want me to do this, I can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, since the slide was made by you. So basically, this is the geometry of the pi chamber. We prescribe the warm bottom, and it's also supposed to be wet surface, and the top is colder. So there will be a 19-degree difference in between the top and the bottom. And the sidewall is saturated, and the temperature is intermediate. So in this setup, the turbulence will be generated by the vertical temperature gradient, and the supersaturation will be generated by the mixing between the air from the top and bottom. Since we have constantly injected aerosol, droplet will grow in this supersaturated environment, and it will also fall out due to the Stokes settling and the compacting with the wall. So the general objectives of this case study is that we want to figure out what are the key processes and parameters that impact the shape of the size distribution, and what do the size distribution vary or respond to the different aerosol injection rate. Can we simulate, or can simulation capture the steady state cloud droplet size distribution with realistic properties, and what causes the difference among the model? How can we justify or mitigate this divergence between the results? And at the end, this is our ultimate question: what are the atmospheric implications we can derive from this comparison? So for this time, we have 7 members of 7 different different models submitted the data sets. And I have categorized based on their type of models. We have 4 LES model simulations and 2 DNS simulations, and 1D simulations by EMPM. So I also use the label indicated at the end for the case discussion. So this is the overview, and we will ask Raymond Shou to share his screen and give a talk on the Pi Chamber lab. I'm sharing my screen.
Okay, thanks, CC. First, I'll make sure that everybody can hear me.
Yeah, can you walk to the speaker location so that everyone can hear you? Yeah, so in case everyone want to, yeah, you can also share the whiteboard, I guess. It's like next to you. If you want to use whiteboard function, you can click the whiteboard and write something or draw something there.
Okay, CC, do you hear me?
Yes.
All right, and hopefully my screen is being shared.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, and you can see the, I have 2 monitors. Hopefully you can see the one that has the full,
Yes.
yeah,
that's what we see.
The correct one. Okay, great. Turn on my laser pointer here. So thanks very much to CC and Steve for the invitation to participate in this. And especially thank you to the local organizing committee. I know a huge amount of effort that has gone in, not just hosting a conference, but hosting now a virtual conference. I guess I can say that a lot of us wish that we could be in Pune, but at least we are there in spirit. So today I'm just going to give a quick overview of the Pi convection cloud chamber and the kinds of aerosol cloud interactions that can occur there. And I won't go into any detail about the modeling that our group has done, as I think we'll see plenty of modeling results later in this discussion. So first of all, just thanks to my colleagues, Will Cantrell. I'm going to be showing other results from Kamalkant Chandrakar, who used to be here at Michigan Tech, Prashant Prabhakaran, Shawan, Subin Thomas, and Fan Yang. Okay, so just a little overview, because I know not everybody in the room is in the details of Pi chamber and this model. So I just want to give an overview of what we're doing, why it's set up this way. So the Pi chamber operates on the principle of Rayleigh-Benard convection. It's one of the canonical flows of fluid dynamics. And, you know, starting with experiments of Benard, analytically solved by Rayleigh, and of course in our own field has been incredibly important kind of simplification of motions within the atmosphere. And of course, we all know the Lorentz model, which is essentially a variation on Rayleigh-Benard convection. In this canonical flow, the Rayleigh number quantifies the departure from. So Rayleigh number of 0 means that the equilibrium means the top and bottom surfaces are at the same temperature. And as that temperature difference is increased, then eventually we have a flow that sets up between the bottom, a convective flow, bottom and top. If the Rayleigh number is sufficiently increased, then we observe period doubling and eventually transition to chaos. I'm showing some classic measurements of that here, where you see the single roll frequency, and then you get doubling and tripling, and eventually you get a full energy cascade like you would expect from turbulence. Once the flow becomes turbulent, then the dimensionless heat transfer, the efficiency of the heat transfer, which is captured by the Nusselt number, scales as Rayleigh number to the 2/7 power. And that's simply a statement that heat transfer is limited by the heat flux, the conductive heat flux through viscous boundaries. An important aspect of the Rayleigh-Benard convection problem is the presence of a large-scale circulation. And you know, that's also been important for understanding boundary layer structure in the atmosphere and cloud patterns and so forth. You can see here at the bottom of the screen, this is one of the simpler setups at low Rayleigh number. This is just a visualization of convection controls. And then at higher Rayleigh number, it starts to split up into something more chaotic and eventually becomes fully turbulent. So here's a kind of a schematic, the way the turbulent flow works. Once the Rayleigh number is large, then we have plume ejection events from the viscous boundary layer at the bottom, and plume ejection events from viscous boundary layer at the top of the. And like I said, a large-scale circulation is usually set up if the system is bounded by sidewalls, especially. And you can see that would go this direction, and then the core is relatively homogeneous and isotropic turbulence. I mentioned the Nusselt number, so you can see that this is essentially in the bulk flow. It's dominated by the turbulent fluctuations, W prime, T prime, normalized by the conductive heat transfer. So this is the denominator is the heat transfer would occur if you just had thermal conduction through the entire domain. And let's see, so this problem has been important in our own field as well. We know the famous experiments of Deardorff and Willis, and Lilly was involved with that. And it actually turns out that this is the reference problem, I guess, that led to some of the early developments of large area simulation. These experiments were conducted at NCAR and were primarily clear air, and so looking at convection as relevant to the atmosphere. So what's different about climate change? I guess you could say it's inspired by, or it's a twist and experiments earlier than that. What's different, unique, I guess, about the Pi chamber is that not only do we have a fluid, air in this case, so we heat the bottom plate, cool the top plate, and we have convection between them. We also maintain the bottom surface at water vapor saturation and the top surface at water vapor saturation. And so when this mixing occurs between them, turbulent mixing, we have a supersaturated environment, and that's illustrated by this plot on the left. This is the water vapor pressure as a function of temperature. The blue line is the Clausius-Clapeyron curve, which expresses the equilibrium. When we have mixing, if we ignore density differences, it's exactly a linear process. And so mixing with a 50-50 mass fraction would lead to vapor pressure that's higher than the corresponding equilibrium pressure. And therefore, that is what we express as a supersaturation in the system. And you can see here in the photograph where we've injected aerosol particles. They've been activated to form cloud droplets, and you can see them illuminated with a laser light sheet. I'm happy to take questions at any time during this. If anything is unclear, stop me. So the governing equations for thermal convection are written here on the left. I'm not going to go through in a lot of detail because I hope they're sufficiently standard. It's recognized. QV is water mixed, QL is liquid water mixed, and L sub B the latent heat of it. So these are for, I should say, cloudy thermal convection. And if we write these in dimensionless form, and I'll refer to Subin Thomas' work. See on the screen, it's blocked by a window. You can see that at the bottom. If you non-dimensionalize these equations, then the shaded blue regions are the dimensionless numbers that show up. So in addition to the two-dimensional class and frontal, we have sort of this explosion of dimensions that serve to illustrate the complexity of the problem. So some of the dimensionless variables are fixed for the atmospheric context. The Stefan number is the ratio of heat to T sub P, the specific heat at constant pressure. But others are actual variables that can change depending on the microphysics. And I'd like to draw attention to those. So we have two buoyancy parameters. We have a Dunn-Kruller number, which is a ratio of time scale, microphysical time scale compared to a turbulent mixing time scale. Supersaturation, of course, is familiar to us. And lastly, a number that it could either be expressed as a settling, some kind of settling parameter, or Gauss number. Some people, yeah, it's been given various names, but suffice to say that essentially the relative strength of gravitational settling speed compared to a characteristic turbulent velocity scale. So these Dunn-Kruller, Gauss, and supersaturation, as well as the buoyancy conditions, show that the system can become quite complex, and they are indeed a function of microphysics. So if we change the droplet concentration or the mean radius, for example, then the Domkohler number will change, Rouse number will change, the rate at which mass is removed from the system changes, and as a result, the saturation adjusts that. And there can be buoyancy feedbacks. And I'm sure we will see some of that illustrated in the cases that are discussed. So this is the Pi chamber. The name comes from the volume of pi cubic meters. As CC explained, we have the ability to constantly inject aerosol particles, and we can classify those aerosol particles. In other words, we can specify the composition, the concentration, and the size of the aerosols that go into the system. We can sample interstitials and residuals, and we can make essentially continuous measurements of thermodynamics, turbulence, and cloud microwave within the Pi chamber. So I'll just pause here because I'm getting kind of some white noise background. And I don't know, CC or Steve, if you're hearing that also.
I think I'm okay.
Okay, all right. Sounds great. I'll just continue then.
Can everyone please?
So this
mute
is
the
an
mic?
example of how the Pi chamber would be set up during a typical experiment. This is work recently published in JGR. I encourage you to look at that if you're interested in more details about the chamber. So, for example, we have this illustrated red bottom surface is the warm surface, blue top surface, and we're constantly measuring with a Velas instrument to determine the size distribution. A LICOR and an RTD measure the water vapor and the temperature. We're injecting CCN with an atomizer, a dryer, and a DMA. And then we have the ability to sample, as I said, both interstitial and residual. So I'll just take this moment to say that, this is really a unique situation where we have the ability. I hesitate to say for the first time, but I would say we have a robust situation here where we have a lot of detailed measurements, and we have advanced modeling techniques, Eulerian, Lagrangian, DNS, LES, a variety of different approaches that can be directly compared to measurements. And that ability to directly compare the measurements to the theory, to computation, I think is an exciting development for our field. And to see when are the conditions where the microphysical details start to influence the flow, and how well can models capture those microphysical details. So this is a cartoon that was already shown. It illustrates the warm and top and cool bottom and top plates. And you can see the sort of schematic representation, steady aerosol growth or activation, and then growth of droplets within a turbulent environment, and eventually settling out by sedimentation. And so the system can be maintained in a steady state. And as a result of the steady state, we are able to have constant, for example, turbulence properties. There's velocity measured at one point in the system, temperature, supersaturation, and you can see at 9 hours here, the supersaturation is reduced when we start to inject aerosol particles. Water content increases. This steady state concept, I guess, of the Pi chamber experiments is one of the unique aspects that allows it to be quite robustly compared to theory and computation. Okay, what I'm showing here is this is a sort of just several snapshots. I've taken little slices. I think Kamal put this together a few years ago. So this is a laser sheet slice of the cloud under very, very high CCN injection rate, and then progressively decreasing until we get to this one on the right. CCN injection rate is relatively low. So you can see the sparse cloud. This would be more like what we would typically refer to as a time cloud. And this is what we might refer to as a highly polluted cloud. And each of these was a steady state experiment. So these are snapshots of what might be given. If we look at actual size distributions, if I imagine taking each of those slices and measuring the droplet size distribution, I might measure something like this. So under very polluted conditions, I would expect to have a narrow droplet size distribution. Very clean conditions, we observed broad size distribution. And there are two sort of partner effects that cause this. One is just the simple, as shown by Steve Kruger, simple balance between aerosol activation, growth, sedimentation in field. And the other is the actual fluctuation contributed growth of cloud droplets in a turbulent field. And how those two aspects contribute to the growth is something that's still an interesting topic of discussion. So I failed to say this can be referred to as a dispersion effect. There's a dispersion indirect effect that's been floating around the literature for at least a decade. When you change the number concentration of droplets, does the width of the droplet size distribution change? And that's was one of the groups that pointed this out was Martin et al. In Jazz in 1994, and they volume cubed can be linearly related to the effective radius. And you can see, I show this just to demonstrate that, convection is convection, and it's quite remarkable, actually, that the degree our measurements, aircraft measurements from stratocumulative clouds. On the right are measurements from the Pi chamber. So each red dot is from one steady state condition with progressively increased CCN injection rate. So this would be a clean cloud and then progressively making more and more clouds. And if you do linear fits in the clean regime, you get a K of about 0.84. In the polluted regime, you get about 0.62. And the observed Ks from the atmosphere tend to be in that range also, 0.6 to 8. So I mentioned analytical size distributions. I don't want to dwell on this. I just want to point it out so that you can see that it can be done under various approximations. Providing the citations here. You can have size independent removal. You can have Stokes removal. You can have no turbulence Stokes removal. And this expression can solve analytically under some of these cases, and then compared to theory. And this is just to let you see that the theory is successful in some cases and not successful. So I'm just going to one of these. It's middle, the turbulent fluctuation growth with Stokes removal, and compare it in two cases. So the left column, this is the droplet size distribution in dimension in a scaled form, so that it shows up as an exponential. So you can see that it fits quite well. These are the measured droplet size distribution. and here are the residuals. So there's no obvious departure from this theory. So you can say, okay, this theory seems to be a reasonable description of the physics inside of the chamber. However, the caveat is that for this left column, we have size selected CCN, and it's relatively clean, or let's say unpolluted conditions. When we go to much more polluted conditions, the mean supersaturation drops. The system is probably more complex, with more reaction, we can speculate. And also we have different sizes of CCN. And you can see now the measured droplet size distribution does not fit this simplified theory. And the residuals indeed show that that would not be a valid description of the physics of the I think this is, so, you know, this is essentially putting it out there as a challenge to say, okay, the physics going on here is non-trivial, and let's see if we can capture this kind of behavior with the more complex models. Okay, speaking of the role of fluctuations, here's something I wanted to show from recent experiments that were led by John and Shawan. So at the top, I'm showing 3 supersaturation distributions. Okay, so imagine that we have distribution of saturation ratio or supersaturation change due to the turbulence. And then let's say I inject particles that are monodisperse and single composition. So CCN, that have a single critical saturation ratio. And that's shown by this dark line. So in regime A, where the mean supersaturation is large compared to critical supersaturation, you can imagine it's active. And I show 2 sample size distributions from that regime here. This is the critical size, denoted by the dashed line. In regime B, where part of the tail of this supersaturation is below the critical saturation, imagine there's a back and forth, basically activation and deactivation of cloud droplets and aerosols. And indeed, you can see a mode of haze droplets here, and then you can see a mode of cloud droplets. And these are 3 different injection rates that are shown. And then if we go to sufficiently high injection rate, or there are other aspects of the experiment change, I'll point out in just a moment, then we can push ourselves into regime C, where even the mean supersaturation is less than the critical value. Normally we would expect to not have any cloud at all, but the right tail of the distribution is above the critical saturation ratio. And so most of the CCN are in the haze mode, but there's a small tail of cloud droplets that are activated. So you would just get a very thin, let's say, wispy cloud, completely driven by fluctuation. This can be, need to be careful of the time here. I think I have about 5 more minutes. This can be accomplished in a clever way by basically changing the saturation ratio at the bottom surface of the pi chamber. So we essentially we fill the bottom with water, and we add salt to that water, so that we are reduced from the equilibrium vapor pressure line because we salt in that lower boundary water. And then we can adjust the temperatures so that we get the same supersaturation as we did in the pure water case, but we have a larger delta T now, you can see in the salty case. So that allows us to change the temperature gradient, but keep the relative humidity the same, and thereby explore the role of fluctuation in the growth. And I'm just going to, skip to that. Not the one. Just see if we can find it here. Yeah. Okay. So the picture that emerges from this is analogous to a well-known picture in cloud microphysics and aerosol cloud interactions. So it's been in several publications, these aerosol limited and updraft limited regime have been discussed, where basically in an aerosol limited regime, here we have a variety of critical supersaturations due to a variety of different DCN, and we have one environmental supersaturation. And if the critical supersaturations are below that, then only the tail will be active. So the system is aerosol limited. On the other hand, if the updraft is strong, then the environmental supersaturation, a lot of CCM will be activated, environmental supersaturation will be reduced, therefore become updraft limited. By analogy, in this set of experiments that I just presented, we can say that there's a mean dominated regime. So now instead of critical supersaturation on the axis, we have environmental supersaturation or saturation ratio. And we have a single critical supersaturation. So I've just swapped these variables. Usually in cloud physics, we're used to thinking about a variety of critical supersaturations, one environmental saturation. In these pi chamber experiments, we flip that. We have a single critical supersaturation, variety of a whole distribution of environmental supersaturation. And so you can imagine that there's a mean dominated regime and then a fluctuation dominated regime, as I explained before, where only the positive fluctuations of the environment would lead to activation of the monodispersion results in the system. So I'm going to end with that, just a quick summary. So the Pi convection cloud operates through moist relative convection to generate a supersaturated turbulent mix for steady state conditions. This large droplet tail appears as we decrease the aerosol injection. That is effectively an aerosol dispersion indirect effect. And quantitatively, it matches what is observed in the atmosphere. A lot of the same physics is involved in both cases. We can make, because of the simplicity of the system, relative simplicity of the system, obtain analytical expressions that can then be compared to aerosols. And we find that there's a complex role when we look at polluted conditions, polydispersed aerosols, series C. We can also explore the role of turbulent fluctuations, which can affect both the activation of droplets and the growth of droplets. And I'll just show this photograph of, just to acknowledge those of you who were in Houghton 2 years ago. This is when we dreamed up the idea of having a Pi chamber simulation workshop, or sorry, Pi chamber case for the International Cloud Model workshop. It's been an exciting 2 years, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing the results. Seen some of them already, and it's really exciting. I think this is a great example of the kind of complementary role that experiments and computation play, because both of them can access different aspects of the problem. So looking forward to it, and again, thanks to CCNT.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's a great memory that you brought up the photo. So thank you very much for giving this comprehensive overview of the Pi chamber. And so the Pi chamber group has provided great help in preparing the case setup and the description. Yeah, and if anyone has questions, you can raise your hand or type in the chat. So I can spotlight you. We have about 3 to 4 minutes for the questions. Yeah. I have a quick question. So in the slides that show about the fluctuation and activations. There was one plot related to the updraft. I'm curious if the PyChamber can control this mean flow updraft.
That's a good question. So there is an updraft in the PyChamber. I explained the large-scale circulation towards the beginning. So let's say the PyChamber large-scale circulation is in the mode of a single overturning roll. Then on one side of the chamber, there will be a sort of a mean updraft. And indeed, some of the computational results. So let me back up. We don't have a way of looking at droplet lifetime in the PyChamber, at least not a direct way. But some of those of you who are looking at this case computationally, using Lagrangian methods, of course, are able to obtain that information. I know of the results from David Richter's group, which are just fascinating because they show you can look at the PDF of droplet lifetime for flow, and there are droplets that last. If you scale by the typical lifetime, you would expect droplets to be activating and growing in the system, and would just fall through sedimentation. Maybe it would last of order, a minute, something like that in the system. But because of the large-scale circulation, the continuous overturning, and the chance of getting caught in that updraft, lifting back up, there are droplets in CCN that are recycled many, many times in the PyChamber, according to David's DNS results, which we have that indeed can be the case. But it's much more direct with the Lagrangian microphone. You can look at that PDF, and like I said, I think it's incredible. You can see particles that last in the chamber many, many tens of residence times, where a residence time would be the residence time for a still fluid.
Thanks. Yeah, I believe the case participants, most of the cases were using the Lagrangian method, so we have chances to see other results in the future if they can output the Lagrangian history of droplets to see how these droplet residence time change from model to model. Do we have any other questions? If not, we will take a 5 minutes break. And yeah, please keep your appetite in the room since 5 minutes is very short. And we will be back in
CC, I do see one hand. It looks like maybe Tara.
Okay, yeah. Oh, sorry, I did not see you. So, yeah. I see Tara is already in phone library. Tara, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah. Am I audible?
Your voice is a little bit broken.
I think there was some audio disturbance throughout. Sorry about that. And
Yeah. Do you have any questions, Sarah? Since you raised your hand. I think, yeah, her internet connection is not stable. But if there's no other questions, we can be back in 5 minutes after this break.
Thank you, CZ. Tara wants to mention that there were some background noises, and we hope everybody can mute themselves and turn off their video when the presenter is presenting content. So we have already 120 participants. So it's a test to the platform how good it can handle this amount of participants. So far, so good. There are some in and out during Raymond's presentation. but in general, we have a good quality of video and audio. Yeah, thank you very much for the great talk.
Yes. Okay. CC,
All
could
right,
you
see
remind
everybody in 5 minutes. Let's have a break.
Yeah. Steve, what did you say?
Yeah. Can you remind everyone what's coming up next so the speakers can get
Oh,
prepared?
yeah, right. Let me share the agenda again, just quickly. Oops.
I think we have the individual
Yeah, so next
modelers
one.
giving a their
Yeah,
presentations.
can you see the
short
share
presentations.
screen? Yeah, I'll put this share screen here during the break. So the next one will be Piotr Deacon from University of Warsaw.
So it looks like CC is now we're overloaded apparently. So I'm not sure what to do to fix that. In any case, those of you who are preparing, ready for your case presentations, that'll be next. And
can you hear me?
We can hear you now.
I think it's a screen sharing issue.
Yeah, you don't need to screen share. I think just
Yeah.
you can just read
you,
the
but I
agenda.
couldn't see the share screen anymore.
Yeah, just read the agenda.
Yeah, so it's next one is Piotr Deacon from University of Warsaw to give a brief summary of his model setup. So yeah, Piotr can get prepared.
And what do the speakers need to do?
So he will need to walk to the speaker location and share his screen.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
See you everyone in a few minutes.
Yeah.
5 मिनिटाचं ब्रेक. अरे मध्येच मॅम म्हटले की ते टीम चालू आहे का, हे मध्ये आवाज येते टीम्स मध्ये, मी इकडे बघतो तिकडे काहीच नाही, आणि म्हणून लगेच तुम्हाला म्हणजे
नाही ते काय करा तुम्ही सगळ्यांना सांगा की माईक म्यूट करा, तो माईकचाच आवाज आहे.
नाही,
कोणाचा तरी
पण
फॅन एसी काहीतरी
सगळ्यांचं म्यूट आहे माईक ऍक्च्युली.
कोणाचं म्यूट नाही, आम्ही खाली बघितलं ना, आपण 15-20 जणांचा माईक अनम्यूट आहे.
हो का?
हा
आता बघा, आता मेसेज पण टाकले तरी लोक ऐकत नाही.
खालनं संदीपने टाकला ना मेसेज.
हो बघितलं मी.
आम्ही खालीच होतो.
तुम्ही खालीच होते का? तुम्हाला फोन लागत नव्हता खाली?
मग ते रेंज नसते ना आतमध्ये, म्हणून आमचा फोन आला तू बॅकग्राऊंड नॉईज आला आहे तू चेक कर. त्यामुळे तरी तुम्ही फक्त प्रेझेंटरचा माईक अनम्यूट ठेवायचा, बाकी सगळ्यांची म्यूट. असं नाही करू शकत.
असं नाही, तेच ना, म्हणजे काय ते तो ऑप्शन नाही.
म्यूट ऑल म्हणून असतं
ते प्रत्येकाने स्वतःच म्यूट करायला पाहिजे.
तसं नाही. आता याच्यामध्ये असं आहे ना की मेक अ प्रेझेंटर म्हणजे तोच फक्त वर असणार, बाकी सगळे खाली, त्यांना तिथे यायची परमिशनच नसते.
ओके, पॉज करू.
The first speaker will be Piotr Deacon from University of Warsaw. He will give an overview of his model of UW LCM. And Piotr, can share your screen?
Can you hear me and see my screen?
I can hear you, but I don't see your screen.
And what about now?
You know, did you click the share screen button in the bottom?
Yes, I did, but it says that my operating system is blocking something.
Okay, so why not we move to the next speaker, and you can send me the the PowerPoint or slides, I can share it for you.
Okay.
So yeah, so the next speaker will be Shinichiro Shima from University of Kyoto, and he will give a presentation on his scale SDM.
Now I'm sharing my screen. So there's some
The
message on the
other participants send me the slides to my email. So in case there is some issue in screen sharing, I can share it for you.
Can
Shima,
you
are you
see my-
there? Oh yeah, I see you.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. And I'm now trying to share my screen, but my computer says that there are too many people.
Shinichiro, could you unmute yourself? Because we couldn't hear you.
I think I can hear him.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
I can hear you.
Good. And I have a
Yeah,
problem
I can see
sharing
your.
my screen.
I actually can see your screen right now.
Oh, really?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
good. So now it's being shared with some cautions. So can you see my screen full?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can see. Yes.
Good. Then let me start. So let me explain a model and the results very shortly. So this is a collaboration work with Shinkichi Takahashi from Tokyo Computer Service Corporation. So this is some explanation about our model. First, scale. Okay, let me turn on the laser pointer. Yes, okay. Scale is the name of the basic libraries for weather and climate models being developed by Riken Institute in Japan. And it's based on a fully compressive non-hydrostatic equations. And we implemented the super droplet method SDM to scale. We call it scale SDM. So GSDM is a particle-based scheme for cloud microphysics, and it's known as it's known by its efficient collision coalescence Monte Carlo algorithm, but it's not irrelevant today because we do not consider collision coalescence for this case. So this table shows the numerical setup we tested. So it's based on fully compressive equations, and we tested the entire domain of the pi chamber. And we considered top and bottom and also the side walls. And as I will show you in the next slide, we adjust this side wall humidity to 0.65% to achieve 3% supersaturation on the steady state without aerosol injection. We simulated 1.5 hours in total, and the first half an hour is for the spin up, so without aerosol injection. And this is also important that we tested the grid size of 6.25 centimeters. This is twice bigger than specified in the case description document. And what else? This is an LES model, and we use Smagorinsky-Lilly model. And this is the super droplet injection rate, and we fixed it to 10 super droplets per cell per minute. it doesn't mean we fix the aerosol injection rate. We change it from 0 to 1,500. And this is the result without aerosol injection. So we change the sidewall relative humidity from 0.5 to 0.9, and we found that for our setup, 0.65, 65% is suitable to achieve 3% supersaturation in the steady state. So we chose this value for the rest of our test. Now we tested various aerosol injection rate, and this is the droplet size distribution. Actually, it's relative frequency, so it's normalized. It's not number density, but anyway, this is a kind of probability density function and or the droplet size distribution, and we can see if we increase the aerosol injection rate, it narrows, the distribution narrows very much, as pointed out by Raymond. Okay, that's it. Thank you.
So I think someone mentioned that he cannot see your screen. I wonder if it happens to everyone. Steve, can you see
I
his?
saw.
I can see it.
Okay.
I could.
Yeah, I guess
I
there are
saw,
too many people that.
Yeah. It's,
This is
if it's
Lulin.
over
I couldn't
100
see and
people,
hear
the system says
Shinichiro.
that it's too
Also,
much,
I
so
heard
you
from the
should
audience
turn
that
off.
some of them
I should
cannot
turn
hear
off my
anything. At
sharing.
least on my screen, it shows that Shinichiro have the sharing AV with too many people. So there might be an upper limit of the people that can be shared. So I don't know how many are impacted, but I know many of you are actually able to hear and see the screen. So Harish and Santip, if you can figure out this issue offline, or I mean separately, that would be great. But as far as now, let's proceed moving forward with Shinichiro's talk.
Yeah.
Raymond is asking question. Let me spotlight him. Raymond, you can speak and unmute yourself.
Okay, I guess you can hear me.
Yep.
Great. So very interesting, Shinichiro. I have a question about, and maybe you said it, but I just missed it. I'm interested in what physics you have for the activation process. So I see your red curve. Well, it was just on the screen. The red curve looks like it has a little haze mode and then a minimum followed by a droplet mode, which is really similar to the measurements. Can you tell us more about what physics you have in the activation?
I will. Can you see my screen?
No.
No.
I think you better just describe in words.
Okay. I will. Wait a moment. So yes, we calculate the activation and deactivation explicitly. So we consider, so first we injected sea salt aerosol, monodisperse sea salt aerosol particle in the system constantly. And the size of the sea salt aerosol is kind of according to that specified in the document, but I don't remember how big was it exactly. But anyway, yes, we're considering the solute effect. And yes, the solute effect is considered in the condensation and evaporation growth equation. So we do calculate the activation, deactivation process. Does this answer your question?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Okay. Since we have already reached 7 minutes, we will move to the next speaker. So Piotr, let me try to share the screen. Can you see? Can everybody see? I also got the same notification of too many people, and some may not see my share screen.
Now I can see your screen. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see it too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Piotr can go to the speaker location and unmute yourself.
Yes, yes, we can hear you.
अरे जो लास्ट में आया ना वो भी देख पा रहे हैं, सब लोग देख पा रहे हो क्या? I will ask everybody
Piotr,
privately.
can you unmute? I
वो
couldn't
नहीं
hear
देख,
you.
हाँ पर बहुत लोग देख.
Let me spotlight you.
Yeah, I cannot hear him either.
I can hear Piotr, so that's the issue.
Oh.
So maybe AV can only be shared with 100 people. At least I can hear Piotr.
Maybe he's just near you.
I think he is spotlighted.
Yeah, I just spotlighted him.
I am on the speaker.
Now I can hear him.
No,
Okay,
we
good.
can hear you.
Great.
Okay, good. Good. So I will talk about the LES that I did. That was the simulation of the entire chamber with the University of Warsaw Lagrangian cloud model. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's actually 2 slides.
Let me just use this one. Is this okay?
Yeah, that's fine. So UWLCM uses the anelastic approximation. We model advection with the MP data algorithm. In these simulations, I use the Smagorinsky subgrid scale model and Lagrangian microphysics with the super droplet method, which is the same method that Shinichiro used and talked about. Next slide, please. Okay, so to model the chamber walls, I use the following approach. So in UWLCM, we use the Arakawa C grid, which is shown in the figure. This shaded region is the modeled domain. These black dots are the positions at which we know temperature, water vapor, etc. And orange lines are the side walls. So as you can see, we have points directly at the walls. So to maintain constant temperature and vapor content at walls, we simply set these prescribed values to these points. And we do this every time step. And we found that to get domain average supersaturation of around 3%, we need to have a side wall humidity of 80%. And also in the model, the walls are free slip. So we added a strong velocity absorber near these walls, and we tweaked it to get the expected PKE. Next slide. And as for the aerosol source, we consider a source that acts in the whole domain. So after 10 minutes, we start adding aerosols, which are represented by super droplets, and we add 1 super droplet per cell every 2 seconds. And we considered 6 different injection rates between 6 and 600 per cc per minute. That gave us droplet concentrations between 4 and 6,500. Next slide, please. And now looking at the results, we start with time series of liquid water content, droplet concentration, mean radius, relative dispersion of radius, supersaturation at droplet location, and its variance. And so different colors are results for different injection rates that give us different droplet concentrations. So as you can see, all of these variables reach a stationary state. Maybe with the exception of the case with very high droplet concentration, which are these brown lines. And what we see is that for low droplet concentrations, the supersaturation is high, supersaturation variance is high, droplets grow large, and the liquid water content is low. And for higher droplet concentrations, droplets grow smaller and liquid water content is higher. One variable that does not change much, that does not depend on droplet concentration, is the relative dispersion of radius, which is approximately the same for all in all cases, except the case with very high droplet concentration.
Okay, I could mention theoretically relative dispersion should not change, and your value is matching the theory. I'll talk about that later.
That's nice. Okay, next slide, please. So here we have profiles at the end of the simulation. These are profiles of temperature, vapor, relative humidity, supersaturation and its variance, and then there's droplet concentration and mean radius. So what I think is interesting is that the supersaturation is highest near the top of the domain and lowest near the bottom of the domain, but the variance of supersaturation it's the opposite way. It is highest near the bottom of the domain, at least for the low droplet concentration, and then lowest near the top. And also the number of droplets and their sizes do not vary much with height. Next slide, please. So finally, here are the droplet size distributions at the end of the simulation. We see that for low droplet concentration, the spectrum is wide and becomes narrow for high droplet concentration. Okay, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I see someone still cannot see the screen. So if you cannot see the share screen, can you log in again and try it?
Yes, I do.
Okay, see, Raymond has raised your hand. I can spotlight you.
YouTube.
Am I okay to ask the question now? Cece?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I already spotlight you.
Yeah. So let's see. I have a question about the slide that's up there right now. I see these little, it looks like little oscillations.
Yes.
So for example, in the blue curve,
Yes.
the mixed blue curve, the yellow curve, green curve, seems like there are some little
So only
bumps
tomorrow's link we
down
have
at the
to
small
cover,
droplet size.
right?
I mean, the overall effect looks really interesting. It looks consistent
Yeah,
with
all
what
the
we
three
measure.
links
I'm
are
just
only
curious
tomorrow's
about those little bumps and what you think might be happening.
Only the tomorrow's link or all the three links?
I think that it might be something happening near the walls.
28th we haven't created the link.
One thing I know that I also tested the aerosol source just only in the middle of the domain,
Already the
and in that case I had more oscillations in this small size. But other than that, I don't know what are those.
Okay.
Are you injecting aerosols intermittently?
Yeah, that's interesting. Thank you.
Oh yeah, yes, I inject them every 2 seconds. So this could also depend on how often I inject them.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. So it's not continuous injection. That makes a lot more sense then.
Yeah, this kind of oscillation also appeared in my case since I inject every second.
Yeah. That's why I asked that question.
Yeah, it's a great question. So yes, we've reached the 7 minutes. So let's move to the next speaker. Is Silvio Shimov from Chopos. He will give his overview of the LES model. Do you want me to share the screen?
I'll try for myself at first.
Okay. Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, as already said, my name
We
is...
get the notice again.
Yeah.
It says sharing AV with too many people.
All right.
Yep.
And only part of us can see the screen.
Okay, let me share the screen now.
Okay. I'll stop mine. So.
Oh, I see.
You see that?
Yes, so you're sharing the screen that you can see, huh?
Yeah, I can see it. How about others? Just curious.
Yeah. If you still couldn't
Cannot
see
see
it.
anything.
Oh.
That's a bit bad. Then.
I guess it's random who gets to see it.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of the
It's a
tough
thing.
issue now.
Yeah. Yeah, since we are over 100%, it should be. The platform was not designed for that size.
Yeah, our ITM colleagues will try to figure that out and try to see if we can get more limits. But at this time,
if there's a way to post it somewhere, then people could follow along, like on a web page or email or I don't know what.
Yeah.
Shall I share mine for the moment?
Yeah, you can share yours. I
Right,
can
yeah.
share. Let's share both. I guess we can do that at the same time. You can. Everyone who can just click the screen that you can see.
Okay. So, yeah, thanks for having me. My name is Silvio Schmalfuß. I'm working at the Leibniz Institute for Tropospheric Research in Leipzig, in Germany. And basically, I'm using OpenFOAM to simulate the Pi chamber. I'm using an LES model, and it's also based on the buoyant pimple foam solver, which is a transient solver for buoyant turbulent flow of compressible fluids. The LES model is called dynamic K equation. For grid and time specifications, I used the values given in the case description, meaning a cell width of 3.125 centimeters and a time step of 20 milliseconds. Also, top and bottom temperatures are according to the case description, 280 Kelvin and 299 Kelvin. Sidewall temperatures 285 Kelvin. Bottom and top are saturated with respect to water. And at the side, I think I have something of 82% relative humidity. For this first phase model, as you might guess from the picture, I used Lagrangian approach.
We are actually prepared for Teams
and the
also.
parcels here contain similar particles, which is the same as the superdroplet approach. Of course, there's two-way coupling for kinetic and thermal energy and for the water vapor.
Ma'am, I'm not able to.
The simulation considers drag force and gravity. Here the parcels get injected randomly across the domain and they are removed at wall contact. The growth model includes pillar theory, and I ignored the subgrid scale fluctuations when interpolating the continuous phase to the dispersed phase.
No, ma'am, they can press. They can just press
simulated 5
so that
injection rates.
they will automatically direct it
1,
to that.
5, 50, 500,
Because I have already placed
1500
symbol, right?
particles
You see
per
that phone
cubic
symbol?
centimeter and minute.
Yes, I updated there.
And this is a summary of my results
so
for a time series
okay,
of
so
the
I will wait for this
one-dimensional results.
PPT to finish.
Basically, everything has reached
Okay.
steady state, but there are two exceptions. One is the turbulent kinetic energy. You can find it here on this second panel from the bottom at the right-hand side. The turbulent kinetic energy starts increasing after the spin-up period, when injecting the particles for my simulation.
Teams.
The other thing that is not steady state is here. For example, the 50 particles per cubic centimeter and minute case. I'll get to this on the next slide. For the rest of the results, I think they are quite consistent with the things seen before. For example, you get this widening of the size distributions here when lowering the injection rates. Yeah, and I have one thing to mention. I think for me, the LAS model seems to be under-resolved, as I only have, or as I have in a subgrid scale, 1/4 of the total kinetic, turbulent kinetic energy, and almost a half of the subgrid scale dissipation rate. And these values should not be that high for a good LES model. So maybe the grid size should be finer for my model. Then I made a mistake. I used the wrong interpolation from continuous to the dispersed phase for the 3 lower injection rates. Namely, I used a model that does not interpolate from all the cell vertices to the particle itself, but from for the cells that are located at walls, it uses the value at the center of the cell. So this in turn, this leads to fewer wall contacts for the particles, and therefore for these 3 lower injection rates, I have more and smaller droplets than expected, and also more aerosol. The liquid water column content increases, and for example, also the variance of the supersaturation increases. And at the right-hand side, you can see a comparison between the two modifications for the 5 and the 50 centimeter per cubic centimeter and minute cases. Yellow and green are for the white interpolation model, and red and blue are for the models I used unintentionally. And here, basically, you can see what I've already told, so that you get more droplets, and this is also where the unsteady state thing from this simulation stems from, and you get higher aerosol load and, for example, smaller mean diameters. Okay, that's basically it from my side.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? If not, we can move to the next speaker.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yes, Lulin sir. Okay. Hello.
Yes, I
CC
can
ma'am.
hear you.
Yes. So actually, okay. I am so sorry for this issue. Actually, we were not aware about this. Like, we can't share like screen for like more than 100 participants. So we have already one backup plan. You see that symbol of like phone symbol. Can you see that phone symbol at where I am standing? You see this one?
Yes.
Yes. So everyone, please stay there only. You can anywhere. You can press X so that we can move to the Teams session, Microsoft Teams. If since many participants are not able to see that shared screens, right?
I think only several of them, but I'm not sure who cannot see that. So do you mean that whoever could not see that go to that icon?
No. I mean that everyone can go on Teams. Just they can press X, so one link will pop up. They can click on that, and then you will be moved to that platform on Microsoft Teams. And there they can share their screen, and then everyone can view that. Yeah.
So everyone goes to
Does
that.
that mean we all go to Teams or just the speaker?
No, all. Yeah, I see Lulin sir already on Teams.
Oh.
I would say for now, it's a bit
too complicated.
too much to get everybody over to another complete
Yeah.
different platform.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, we
Yeah,
only have
it's true.
103 in the room, so we might have 1 or 2 people, 2 or 3 people cannot see this.
102.
But then let's
101.
yeah, let's
So,
go
okay.
go with the current platform.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we will
Okay.
stay in the same platform for now.
Okay.
Maybe
104.
tomorrow we will have backup plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So the next speaker is Fan Yang from Brookhaven National Laboratory. He will give a presentation on his SAM model results and model setup. Fan, I cannot hear you. Okay.
Fan, you need to unmute yourself.
Your mic is muted, yes.
Yeah, you need to unmute. I couldn't hear you.
Hello, Fan, your mic is muted. Could you please unmute it?
Yeah, we can see your screen, but we cannot hear you.
I think actually I can unmute him. Oh no, I couldn't. Yeah, could you move your
Fan, you
mouse
need to unmute.
Maybe the moderator can help unmute him. I couldn't do that.
There is an issue with his mic. I think he has to do that. Maybe.
Do we have more speakers?
We have 3 more.
How about we
guess
move to the next one and after Fan figured out the mic issue?
Yeah. So the next one is Theodore Macmillan from University of Notre Dame. He will give an overview of his DNS work.
Hey everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Loud and clear.
All right, I'm going to try to share my screen. Okay, you see that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Yes.
All right, awesome. Okay, hi everyone. I am Theo Macmillan, and along with David Richter, we've done DNS of the Pi chamber. So this is the basic model. So we do DNS. It's so full length scale, so 2 meters by 2 meters by 1 meter, and we have a 128, 128, 128 grid. We can increase that, and we have been doing that more recently. So 256, 256, 128. The flow is fully coupled to the particles, and sort of the trade-off, because we're doing DNS, to fully resolve everything, we have a much lower Rayleigh number than the actual Pi chamber, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but it may be around 10 to the 9th or 10 to somewhere around there. Anyway, it's lower. And then for the particle phase, we have Lagrangian particles that we track around. We inject them at the midplane, and they're removed when we inject them as aerosols, and they're removed when they hit the top or bottom wall. Again, their heat momentum and moisture is coupled to the flow. It's a two-way coupling. And the cases we submitted for the Pi chamber comparison, they have around 10 to the 6th particles. And then using the super droplet method, we get an effective 10 to the 10th particles, and I'll show what that is briefly. This is something I thought I'd mention also. So we changed the Rayleigh number of the flow by decreasing the flow gravity. And one sort of issue that comes up when we do that is the particles, they don't settle out. If you decrease their gravity, the exact same. So right now what we're doing is we keep this sort of dimensionless particle setting velocity constant And these are sort of the terms we use, and it's maybe an open question what the best sort of relationship that you want to keep constant there is. Anyway, so then I'll just go through these quickly, but this is our model. So we have this grid, and the droplets hang out in each grid cell, and you interpolate the values at the borders of the grid. This is, so for the air phase, we just solve all these equations. We have a pseudo-spectral horizontal discretization, so we have periodic boundary conditions in the horizontal directions. And the effect of that is that we can have top and bottom walls, but we can't have side walls. And I'll explain in a second how you kind of get around that. These are the terms that sort of how the particles interact with the flow, and this is also how you implement the super droplet or super particle method. You essentially just add scalar multiples onto these terms. So each droplet acts like 100 droplets or 1,000 droplets. For the particle phase, and this is just for reference, but these are the equations we solve. So we sort of explicitly resolve the activation. They're injected as aerosols and they activate. So here, so on the top, we have no slip. We keep it saturated and at 280. So we keep the same. This would be another way of lowering your Rayleigh number if you wanted to by decreasing the temperature differential. But if we did that, the activation physics would be different. So, and again, it's periodic. But interestingly enough, I think Raymond mentioned this earlier, but we still do see sort of like large scale circulation, even though we don't have walls, and it kind of oscillates around more. Maybe it's free to move, but so one effect of not having sidewalls with the 100% saturation on the top and bottom is that the mid-chamber relative humidity gets really, really high. So you can see this is just, if you just set the top and bottom at 100%, you'll get like 114% in the middle, which is way too big. So what we do, and again, this is, not realistically what you'd see in the Pi chamber because they have the sidewalls removing a lot of moisture. This is without droplets, by the way. So what we do is we apply a constant sink to all the points until we get 103 relative humidity, and we sort of do this control problem. And so once you do that, you get this more realistic looking profile of relative humidity. And again, this kind of peak at the bottom, which has effects on the results. And that's sort of the thermal boundary layer at the bottom. And as we increase the Rayleigh number, which we have done a little bit on top of the results here, but that shrinks. Again, just to summarize, we have these fully resolved flow particle dynamics from the Lagrangian perspective. I guess some things to just keep in mind when you see our results. I guess you'll see those later, but we have a lower Rayleigh number, the particle gravity scaling. There's a sort of an open question, and then also we have these sort of other boundary conditions. One thing, so that's all I have. One thing I thought I'd show this because this really quickly. This is just some of the vertical profiles. You can see those sort of relative humidity. This is as you increase the injection rates this way. You can see we sort of have this very vertical inhomogeneous, partly due to the boundary. So you can see the particles get really big at the bottom here. And one thing, just because Raymond teased it, this is sort of results we have for this is looking at the lifetimes of individual droplets, sort of as you, again, red is the lowest injection rate, blue is the highest. But you can see, so you have particles that are living super, like many turnover times of the simulation. And you can actually, here we plotted number of activations. So in our simulation, it's really interesting. Particles can be activated up to 20 times throughout their lifetime. Activated and deactivated. So that's all I have. Yeah.
Thanks, Theo. Any quick questions? We have 1 minute. Okay, if not, let's move to Fan's talk.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let me share my screen. Can you see the shared screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So here I will
give a brief summary of our large data simulation of the cloud chamber. And I'd like to thank the co-authors, Mikhail Ovchinnikov, Subin Thomas, Raymond Schoen, and Andy Bogdan. So I skipped the introduction part. I'm more focused on the model setup. So the model setup is based on an atmospheric model, SAM model. We modify the model to include the wall boundary conditions and some other fluxes, such that it can be used to simulate the Pi chamber. So one thing I want to highlight here is to reach supersaturation of about 3% without cloud droplets. We set the wall-related humidity to be about 81%. So it's similar to, I think, the UWLES, but quite larger than the scale SDM model. So I think how to handling the surface flux is another challenge for LES. So in our model, we use Money-Upcoff similarity to parameterize the surface flux. And another thing I want to highlight is we do not use super droplet method as other LES model. We use spectrum beam microphysics model. And we use two. So first is the Hubert University beam microphysics scheme developed by Alexander Kahan. And it has been used in many atmospheric models to study the cloud in the atmosphere. And it is also the beam microphysics scheme that we used before. So Subin Thomas has a paper in 2019 that the result of that Pi chamber simulation is based on the huge beam microphysics scheme. So in this study, we implemented another beam microphysics scheme developed by Chen and Lam, 1994. So the difference is the huge scheme is one moment beam microphysics scheme. So the mass mixing ratio in that beam is a prognostic variable. And for the Chen and Lam beam microphysics scheme, it's two moments. So both number and mass mixing ratio in that being are prognostic variables. Another thing I want to highlight is the microphysical process we consider in the model, including activation, condensational growth, and sedimentation. So we ignore the collision coalescence, scavenging, and CCN regeneration. So this setup is similar to Wojtek Grabowski's paper last year. Which for example, the activation of cloud droplets is based on the Kola theory, and droplet will disappear in the chamber if it is sediment out or totally evaporate. Another, I think, final thing I want to highlight is we use the same dynamic model. So it's the same dynamic framework, but two different beam microphysics schemes. So help us to better understand the spread of different microphysics scheme to the results. And for the International Cloud Modeling Workshop, we tried 7 different aerosol injection rates. Aerosols are injected in every grid box and each time step, so which means every 0.02 seconds after 0.5 hours. And so here's the result for different cases. Bluish are like clean and reddish are polluted. So I think the trend of the change of those variables are consistent with other models. For example, as the increase of aerosol injection rate, we expect to have lower related humidity and higher liquid water content. And so you can also see how the properties change without cloud, which is at the beginning of the first half hour, and how it will change after we inject aerosol particles. And here's the microphysics variables like number concentration, mean droplet radius, effective radius, and droplet size distribution. One thing I want to highlight is you can see noticeable difference of the droplet number concentration between two different schemes. So last thing I want to highlight is droplet size distribution in the steady state. which is calculated between 1 and 2 hours, average over the whole domain and also temporal averaging. So what we notice, this huge B microphysics scheme reproduces fluctuation of the distribution or patterns. Even we do the spatial and temporal averaging. So no matter how we do the averaging, it always has these patterns. But the chain B microphysics can have a much smoother distribution. So here's the conclusion. So I think both microphysics scheme capture the similar trains of variables as the increase of aerosol injection rates, noticeable difference in the number concentration are found, and the droplet size distribution from the CL scheme is much smoother. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Do we have questions?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Can your aerosols reactivate?
It can. So in this simulation, no. So the droplet will evaporate, and so totally disappear. So this setup is similar to a Voltax paper last year.
Okay.
But we can have the capability to consider the reactivation of droplets. But this is not specified in the workshop. I think we can discuss more.
Okay, because I think that's implicit in a lot of the other models, but it'd be something good to discuss that they can reactivate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wojtek has raised the hand, so I have put you on spotlight. You can unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, a quick question. Of course, the double moment microphysics is twice as expensive as single moment. Have you tried the kind scheme with twice as many bins? So the computational cost will be the same, but of course you will have more resolution in the bin scheme. Have you tried that?
You mean increase number of bins to represent the droplets?
No, just to have higher resolution in the bin scheme, because you know, with single moment, double moment, then you have twice as many bins. I mean, twice as many variables to affect in the double moment bin microphysics. So so basically, you can have twice as many bins in the single moment scheme just to have the same computational cost. Because the number of means, of course, matters, and I'm curious whether that would make any difference. Just curiosity. If you haven't done it, then of course, that's maybe something to consider at some point.
Yes, thank you for the suggestion. I did several tests for the chained lamp scheme using so doubling the resolution in radius space, and the results are similar, but I did not test for the Hugie. And another thing is I contacted the Alexander Kehan that they are currently working on the new Hugie scheme that hopefully can reduce the numerical diffusion. And so another kind of course I learned is although there are several Hugie scheme widely used in the community, but there are different versions of the Hugie scheme. So the results in this study depend on one specific version of the Hugie scheme, and I will try to use the latest version of the Hugie scheme in the future.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Due to the interest of time, let's move to the next one.
Hello, we have one more hand raised from Shinchiro Shima.
Yeah, we can move that question to later discussion since we are over time.
Yes.
Yeah. So the next one is it's from me, and I'm doing the DNS work for the cloud chamber core region. And let me share this one.
मी मॅडमला सगळ्या लिंक पाठवतो.
ओके. सगळे म्हणजे
युट्यूबची आणि मायक्रोसॉफ्ट टीम्स.
Okay.
उद्यापासून
तीच लिंक मी
Can you
कॉपी
see
करतो.
it? Can you see my screen?
कशाला
Yes.
लिंक कॉपी करणं
Okay,
डायरेक्ट
great.
करणं करता
So
डायरेक्ट
yeah, for this case, I'm using the direct numerical simulation only to simulate the core region of the pi chamber, which is different from the rest of the members.
कसं असतं सांगू का
And
मॅक्सिमम लोक जर तुम्ही
so to
मीटिंग मध्ये
give you
घेतलात ना
a
तर हा मोठा प्रॉब्लेम
background
तुम्हाला
of
मॅनेज करणं नाही
what DNS
पॉसिबल
is,
100 लोकांची माईक बंद करणं चालू करणं ओपन
it
करणं
our model is actually a hybrid of DNS
जेवढे 15 लोक
and the
प्रेझेंटर
Lagrange
आहेत
particle
तेवढ्यांनाच
model.
टीम्सची
So the
लिंक द्यायची
DNS is a
बाकी
very
सगळ्यांना युट्यूबवर
accurate
पहा
way to simulate the
ते
turbulence
युट्यूबवर तिथे
as
क्वेश्चन
it
करणार
fully
युट्यूबचे
resolves
क्वेश्चन
the
तुम्ही
Kolmogorov length
टीम्सच्या चॅट
scale
बॉक्स मध्ये टाकायचे
and
आणि त्यांना रीड करून आन्सर द्या म्हणायचं संपलं
which is the smallest turbulent eddies in the domain. The turbulence is assumed homogeneous and isotropic
परत
in the
तुम्ही इथले
chamber's
चार्ट हे
center.
करणार त्याचे मेसेज टिकते
Large
बघणार
scale
काही जण
forcing
युट्यूब मध्ये
is
असणार किती मॅनेज
implemented
करणार ना तुम्ही कोणतं
on the
कोणतं मॅनेज करणार
fluctuated velocity as well as
सिंपल करा
fluctuations
ना
in the
कशाला किचकट
temperature and moisture to maintain its fluctuation level induced by the wall fluxes. And for the particles, interactions between particles and flow are accurately represented. So the particle-particle interactions were switched off for this case as we don't have collisions. And this interaction is mainly important for the collisions between particles. And we have constantly evolving turbulence as we can show in this animation. And the turbulence transports the particle in the domain. And our model is able to resolve millions of real particles. And if with super dropping method, it can go even more than 100 millions. So here it shows a simple diagram of the model. The DNS is a cubic with 20 centimeters in length, and it may resolve the core region of the cloud chamber. So since it's only part of the chamber, we don't have walls. Everything coming out of the box has to be prescribed. For example, the destabilize the thermal fluxes from the boundaries and the sidewalls that could lead to the intermittent change in the mean and the fluctuations inside the cumulative region will be described by using a nudging term and the forcing. Here I just showed the equations. I'm not going to detail this equation, but just want to mention for the nudging term to determine the domain average of the DNS, the term in red shows the nudging, and we prescribed a mean temperature and a mean mixing ratio to constantly nudge the domain with a time scale set by tau 0. And for the fluctuations, we have forcing in temperature and water mixing ratio in the largest scales to mimic the fluctuation cascaded down from the scales outside the DNS
गरज
domain.
नव्हती माहितीये का तुम्ही मॅडम
So in this case, we have constant forcing. Therefore, the fluctuations is relatively stable with respect to time.
एवढे वर्कशॉप झालेत ऑफिस मध्ये म्हणजे
So
असं
for
नाही की
the
आमचं पहिलं वर्कशॉप
microfluidics, I had
वर्कशॉप झालेले
eight cases of injection rate, and the aerosols were constantly introduced across the domain. And by using a random location to remove the particles, I actually use their projected position in the next 0.1 second in the chamber, so each particle was given a virtual random location in the chamber, and when the particle velocity at the current time step was used to predict the new location after the 0.1 second, and if this new location is outside the wall, then the particle is removed. The super droplet method was used in the high injection rates. Here I only show 2 cases. So the droplet size distribution is the lowest injection rate. Is shown here. The color shows the number concentration, and we have radius in the vertical velocity, vertical direction, and we can see that these stripes of orange color denotes the constant injection events, and those with lighter stripes was caused by the restart of my simulation. In the beginning, we missed the one injection event, so we create a mini transient status. But this should not affect our overall steady state statistics. And here we showed the size distribution, and we can see 2 peaks. So this peaks matches the description from Raymond Shell's earlier slides on the region 2, where we have part of the supersaturation was beyond the activation or critical supersaturation. Part was below the critical supersaturation. So that corresponds to the droplet growth and the particles in the haze mode. And we also have the highest injection rate case shown here. So here we don't see the very high number concentration of droplets, as the high injection rate suppress the growth of the particle. So a lot of them are in haze mode. So that's my slides. If anyone has questions? Otherwise, we will move to the last one. Last one is Steve's EMPM model. Steve, can you share?
Raymond has one question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Raymond, I have a spotlight.
I have spotlighted Raymond.
Okay.
But त्याच्यासाठी डायरेक्टर अप्रूव्हल
I didn't see.
Raymond, if you want, you can unmute yourself. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just similar question as I asked before. CC, what physics do you have in the activation? I was looking at your regime C. Do you have color theory, for example, implemented?
Yeah, so for the activation, I include the solute and curvature term as well. So it's following the Couller's curve.
Okay, thank you.
सेटअप बनवलं क्लाउडचं खूप मोठा म्हणजे पेपर.
Should I go ahead?
You are muted.
Oh. That's
I can hear you.
That's strange.
All right, you're unmuted.
I'm unmuted now?
Yes.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right, I thought so. Okay. Okay. The approach that I've been using is quite different, but in a way very similar to the previous modeling approaches. The reason that most people use three-dimensional models is because the flow is three-dimensional. And we really don't need millions of droplets to get proper statistics. When we analyze these results from droplet resolving simulations, often a few thousand droplets are enough. So if there was a way in which we could still model the relevant flow processes, the turbulence, yet not have to simulate hundreds of thousands of droplets because we're encompassing the whole domain, that would make our modeling much more economical. And that is what the so-called explicit mixing parcel model approach uses. So let me explain, or try to explain, this method. It's quite different. It's a one-dimensional approach, and this one-dimensional approach allows you to resolve the fine scale variability. You can easily resolve the Kolmogorov scale, and we can still follow the growth of individual droplets as they move about through these parcels. This method has been around for some time, but until recently we haven't actually been able to convince people that it works because we haven't had the DNS results to compare to. So this is the idea. What we do is, I'll just say it in words first, is we do in effect, we look at sequences of flow states. We'll look at a flow state before the turbulent eddy acts, which is a three-dimensional eddy, and then we look at it afterwards. And the before and after can both be represented in just one dimension. So this is a schematic of how this works. If you think of this y-axis here as distance, and it's representing some concentration gradient, a three-dimensional eddy impacts this concentration gradient, and the resulting state is modified by the eddy. And so this so-called triplet map actually is a discrete event, and it changes the position of the fluid parcels in discrete events. Okay, and it's very nice because not only are it's purely Lagrangian, there are no numerical artifacts, and it's very fast. Just a little more background. These triplet maps are implemented in a way that mimics three-dimensional turbulence. So they have a size distribution which is the same as we find in three-dimensional turbulence. A few large eddies and many, many small eddies. The rate at which these eddies occur is then representative or tied to the turbulent kinetic energy. For droplets, we simply do Lagrangian droplets, and we just do it like any other Lagrangian droplet. So there's really nothing special at all here. And we're able to follow the droplets and their aerosol properties, just like in any Lagrangian method. These droplets, of course, grow in their immediate environment. Okay, little schematic of the domain. This is just a small section. It does actually have to be three-dimensional, but it's sort of like string theory, where the two spatial dimensions that make up this cube are kind of hidden when you look at it from a large-scale point of view. Like I said, it has been compared to direct numerical simulations, and we find that for the same number of droplets, say 9 million, and duration 30 seconds, the EMPM requires only 5 CPU hours compared to about 20,000 for the DNS. I'm not going to show those results, of course. Okay, and the case set up for this is the standard case. I thought I'd spend my time explaining the model rather than going over any results. You'll see those later. That's it.
मग आता आईस ब्रेकर सेशन आहे त्याच्यामध्ये तर भरपूर मोठं आहे. मग त्याच्यामध्ये काही नाही, लोक जाऊन असं व्हिडिओ पाहू शकतात. म्हणजे ताजमहलचा एक फोटो ठेवलाय आपण, तुम्ही गेला ना ते व्हिडिओवरती एक्स क्लिक करून तो व्हिडिओ पाहू शकता. म्हणजे असं चांगलं होतं ते. आता मला माहित नाही पॅनल डिस्कशन मध्ये पॅनल डिस्कशन
I think we can go for short break. So the next session after the break will be case discussion. So it will let will be led by me and Steve. And anyone want to ask questions or join the discussion, feel free to raise hand. We will let you. And let's take
सगळेजण ऍक्च्युली
I think 8 minutes
थोडं कंप्लेंट करतात.
break and be back on 10
जर तुम्ही
10 minutes.
आता जसं आपण सकाळी आलो तुम्ही मला सांगितलं मला हे रेकॉर्ड करायचं काढलं ना सोल्युशन
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. So yeah, let's have a 10 minutes break and come back and we can squeeze the poster session a little bit for
2
the
दिवस झालं
discussion.
शिकलोय सॅटर्डे संडे पासून चालतंय मग मी निघू का
10 मिनिटं ब्रेक दिला आता त्यांनी. हो सर तुम्ही निघा मग आता याच्यावरती
Thank you
तेच चालू
all
असणार.
speakers for the great
मॅमला तुम्ही पाठवलं का?
introductions and look forward to the discussions.
ग्रुपवरच मेसेज केला
ओके तुम्ही आहात का ग्रुपमध्ये
Okay, 10 minutes. Shall we start? So thanks
Shall I
again.
request everyone to be in the room?
Excuse me, I could.
Shall I request everyone to be back in the room?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I guess everyone is in the room. So thank you very much for each of the speakers to give the model summary in the last session, and thank you everyone for bearing the technical difficulty this time. We are a little bit over time. Hopefully the rest of the session will be smooth. So here I listed the members of the models again for the comparison and the discussion. And I will label each of the case by their institute and model type in the following discussion. And if anyone want to say something, please raise hand. I think Steve or the moderator or the Lulin can unmute spotlight you. So I made a summary table for the 7 members to give you a quick comparison. The first 4 members listed in the first 4 columns are the LES model, which simulated the entire chamber with sidewall, as I also showed the diagram at the bottom. And the fifth one from UND's DNS, it also simulates the entire chamber but without the sidewall. And it uses constant sync on orbits to maintain 3% supersaturation. And for the NCAS DNS, it's only simulating the core of the chamber. And the EMPM is 1D, which includes the bottom wall and the top wall, and has the considered the flux from the sidewall as well. And if we look at the injection rates from the different members, I think they are reasonably well situated in similar range between 1 and 10,000, I would say. So for the UW, it's slightly lower, and also from EMPM and NCAS DNS and the UND and SAM has the highest injection rate. So in response to the injection rate, we also have different number of droplets in the domain based on their injection. And so interestingly, we see the UW's LCM model has a relatively higher number concentration of droplets, as well as in the EMPM model. In comparison, NCAS DNS and the UH scale SDM creates less droplets, and this could be caused by either the removal mechanisms or the activation mechanism. And most of the case has the same top and bottom temperatures, and for EMPM it's slightly different, but I think it's differed only by 1 degree. And for the top and the bottom mixing ratio, most of the case is following the case description by assigning saturation of 100% in relative humidity in both walls. And for the sidewalls, different relative humidities were prescribed in order to reach 3% supersaturation before the injection. And we also have different resolutions. So here is the aerosol injection mechanisms. You can see there is a slight difference between the model members. Most of the case, they assign, I think I need to change this one. UW is also injected in the center of the chamber, same as the UND's DNS model, and the rest are all randomly injected and across the domain. And for the particle removal, most of the case use the Stokes sedimentation, and some of them will detect the wall contact events and remove them when contact with the top water and the sidewalls. So here I will show some of the statistics. So in our case description, we requested two groups of data. One is the 1D time series of the domain average, and the other is vertical profile averaged horizontally across the domain. And just name the complete list of the 1D and the vertical profile. So here we will only show some of the results since it's too many. And for me, I will give an overview, overall comparison of those two set of data, and Steve will give a comparison more focused on the microphysics, specifically the droplet size distribution, response to different supersaturation, mean and fluctuation. So here, first I will show the liquid water content time series. And the different injection rates were distinguished by color. So in general, from red to blue or purple, it's from low injection to high injection. And we can see those results that liquid water content are very sensitive to the injection rates as well as the model setup. In general, we see high injection rate corresponds to high liquid water content, but the range differs a lot among the cases. In some experiments, liquid water content did not reach steady state. For example, the UH scale, the SDM, and the UND's DNS. In the highest injection rate, the number or the liquid water content keeps climbing up, and correspondingly, we see almost all cases has steady state radius in response. Therefore, you could see the liquid water content change is mainly determined by the number concentration of particles. So here I also showed the number concentration of droplets in the second row and the number concentration of aerosol in the third row. Since we mentioned that the UH and the UND's model did not reach steady state in liquid water content, which corresponds differently to the number concentration of droplets and aerosol. So in UH, we can see that it's the number of droplets declines in the highest injection rates. So there is nearly no droplets in the highest case, while correspondingly the number of aerosols increasing with time, which I think increasing liquid water content respond to those aerosols. Therefore, for the highest injection rates, there are lots of haze particles, but no droplets, which is different from the rest of the group. For the UND's case, since we don't have steady state in liquid water content, but it's mainly contributed by the increasing of droplets. So overall, we can see the aerosol activation and droplet growth mechanism or process quite different, even with the same injection rate constraint. And in comparison, NCAR-DNS model in the last column showed the lowest liquid water content. It's smaller than 0.1 in the steady state. And the corresponding dropping down concentration and also the mean radius, just to remember, were also relatively low compared to the other cases. This is, I think this is mainly related to the particle removal mechanism. So in my case, I believe the droplets, or especially the large droplets, were removed too efficiently. So that contributes to the lower the liquid water content. And here I showed the corresponding supersaturations in each cases, as droplet growth and aerosol activations are determined mainly by the supersaturation at droplet's immediate environment. Therefore, its mean and the supersaturation are both important. So the upper panel shows the mean supersaturation time series, and the lower panel shows the fluctuation. There are two lines for each injections, so that's the dotted line showed here was the Lagrangian supersaturation, meaning a supersaturation averaged over droplet locations. And the solid line, maybe it's hard to tell, the solid line is the Eulerian supersaturation is averaged over all grid boxes. We can see, at least for some of the cases, they differed quite a lot. And in UW's case, the supersaturation, the mean supersaturation from the Lagrangian average is much higher than its Eulerian average, meaning that droplets experience much higher moisture environment than its surrounding on average of the chamber statistics. And for the less scale, covering much smaller than the pi chamber, as shown in the NCAS-DNS, the difference in the Lagrangian supersaturation and the Eulerian is quite small. They are almost the same, which means that this difference is mainly responds to the large-scale process. So here I showed the mean temperature and the mixing time series. Overall, the thermodynamics fluctuations has a similar trend as the microfluidics. They reach steady state pretty fast right after the aerosol are injected, but the steady state values differ by models. We can see that here the reference line I showed were given by the steady state temperature predicted by the flux balance model. So it's the theoretical mean temperature at the center of the chamber. You can see most of the models, they have a higher mean temperature and higher QV compared to the theoretical value. Well, since the uncast DNS was purely forced, given those mean values, so it keeps the same as what was provided by the theoretical value. Specifically, a UND model has the highest value among all. I think this is highly related to the sidewall setup, since the first 4 members include the sidewall, while the UND's DNS they prescribed the sync term in each grid without sidewall, so that could affect the overall thermodynamics. And then here, I also showed the vertical profile of of each member, and you can see that the temperature profile is not sensitive to the ejection rate or the microphysics. It's stayed quite the same among different cases, and for the cases with with the side walls, the temperature at the center is closer to the theoretical model predicted by the flux balance model, as we can see from this dashed line. While UND has higher temperature at the center. And we also noticed that the temperature profile near the wall largely differs. And some has a very high gradient, which extends to the wall temperature that we prescribed in the case description, but some has quite uniform profile across the domain. So I think the flux model or the flux parameterization plays an important role in modifying this temperature. Here is corresponding with the relative humidity vertical profile. We can see that the relative humidity is more sensitive to the injection rates. So in general, the low injection rates correspond to relatively higher supersaturation, except for the UND case, where in the core region, we have the opposite trend, where low injection rate corresponds to a low supersaturation. And in UW and in the BNL SEM model, we see there is strong subsaturation in the center of the chamber when the injection rates are high, as shown in the blue colored lines. This difference could be caused by the different activation schemes, as it is the droplets rows are very sensitive to how they are activated and how solute terms were presented in the model. So I think for these two cases, they have very efficient or very strong solute effect compared to the rest of the group, which leads to the subsaturated environment in their case. And here is the thermodynamic fluctuations, which determines the fluctuation of the supersaturation field. And we see that those values also differ a lot among the cases. And the first, except for the uncast case, which the fluctuations were prescribed by a constant forcing, which we can see pretty stable fluctuations across the time. But the rest were pretty much determined by their bottom and the top wall fluxes. Even though we have the exactly same temperature in the bottom and the top wall, we still got quite difference in the fluctuation. One thing we want to mention is that those fluctuations, you can see it's not altered much by the injection. It's altered by the injection rate. So they keep pretty much the same level. Yeah, and here is the turbulence intensity. They correspond well, or they match the results with the fluctuation of temperature and mixing ratio, where the high TKE or high ADR will correspond to a higher fluctuations in the temperature and the mixing ratio. So that's an overview. So I do want to bring up there are two cases who submitted the wall fluxes in the bottom and the top, and we can see the number or the value differs quite a lot by different order of magnitude. So I think there will be some discussion in the flux parameterizations each model used to prescribe the wall fluxes. And yeah, that's what I have for this overview. And anyone has questions, please raise your hand. Yeah.
Okay, Piotr, I spotlight you. You can unmute yourself.
Okay, I just wanted to comment on these flux values. They are definitely too high. I think that I have some error in this output. I need to look it up.
Okay, yeah.
All right, Chun-Song, you're next. You can unmute yourself.
I think you're still unmuted.
Chun-Song, I think, are you able to unmute yourself?
I think I make it. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
you can speak now.
I have a question about liquid water content, the increase of water content with increasing aerosol number concentration. Can you go back to that slide?
I think CC just disconnected. I think she will be back soon. Yes, the platform sometimes just disconnect people and then reconnect. So CC is not in the room now.
I could hear her.
Sorry, Chun-Song, I couldn't show that.
No problem, no problem.
Steve, are you able to unmute and address Chun-Song's question?
I could hear CC.
Huh? Really?
Not here yet. Yeah, CC is not here yet.
You hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I was actually in the room, but Steve can hear me. I guess the rest of you couldn't.
I guess you got unspotlighted. Maybe you're standing next to Steve so he could hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay, it's fine now. Yes.
Cool.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I just put the screen here.
Yeah, I want to know the reason, the mechanism for the increase of liquid content with increasing aerosol number concentration. Is it because when aerosol number concentration is really low, the condensation surface area is really small, then liquid content should be very small. When aerosol number concentration increases, so the condensation surface area increases, as a result, liquid water content increases. Is that the mechanism?
I think there are two different aspects since the liquid water content relates to the number of droplets we have in the domain and also the mean radius. We can see from here. from the mean radius, the high injection rate corresponds to relatively low number concentration, but it was balanced by the even higher number of droplets. And I guess when most of the model calculate the liquid water content, they also calculate the haze particles, which will have a decent contribution to the water content as well. I think
I can add to that. Another way to look at it is that the small droplets have a longer residence time. And so the many small droplets just stick around longer and give a larger liquid water content.
Okay, that's a good point. Another question is that if we increase number concentration to a very high number, should we get a very low liquid water content? I see some signature in the third column, the droplet LGS. Number concentration is 1500. Liquid water content becomes lower, right?
Yeah.
Blue line, yeah.
I think maybe Silvio can add a comment. I remember that he mentioned there was some difference in the droplet removal between the low injection rate and the high injection rate. That could also lead to different response to the liquid water content. Is that right? Maybe I can spotlight Silvio. And
Can you hear me?
Unmute. Yeah.
Okay. I can have a look at my updated data, but I think it doesn't change that much. But yes, you're right. It changes. I had some issues with this this interpolation model, as I explained before.
Yeah. So I guess if you look at the rest of the cases, it still have monotonic response to the injection rate.
Oh no! But one moment, I've just I mixed up the decimal places. So for my case with 5 particles per cubic centimeter and minute, in the updated version, it's I think 0.05. So
it's even lower. Yeah.
It's not much more. Which is the other one's 50 years. It stays at 0.15. Okay. I can have a look into this, why this is behaving so odd. It seems strange. Yeah, I'll have a look into this.
Okay, yeah. I think most of the case are following the monotonic trend. But there is an interesting point that I would like to discuss about the Schema scale model, where in the highest injection rate, I think all droplets were suppressed and deactivated. So there are no droplets, but the liquid water content is still increasing. Maybe Shima can comment.
Yeah, I spotlight you, Shinichiro. You can mention.
I have to think more about it to understand what's going on here. I think yes. In my case, I injected wet aerosol particles. So the beginning have some amount of liquid water. So if injection rate is very high, aerosol injection rate is very high, it means we also kind of injecting a lot of liquid water. So I think this can happen. This is how I understand.
Okay, yeah, I guess if you only include the droplets in the liquid water content, it will have same trend as the number concentration of droplet. If you remove the haze particle from the liquid water content, I think you will see the decreased trend.
Yes, it should be. I have a question. How other models are kind of calculating, injecting aerosol particles? Do you assume wet aerosol particles or dry aerosol particles? And if it's wet aerosol particles, how do you decide the size of the amount of liquid water attached to those aerosol particles?
Okay, I've looked into that, and I kind of based my results on looking at Theo's DNS, and basically I injected particles that were similar to his deactivated aerosols, which were, about, I don't know, just a fraction of a micron. So they're hygroscopic, but they're at some equilibrium radius. They react very, very quickly to any changes. So even if you injected smaller ones, it wouldn't make too much difference. But they should be, definitely in the unactivated size range.
Yeah. For my case, I also have applied a very thin wet layers when aerosols are injected. I think it's 1.5 times the dry radius is my initial aerosol size.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I think it's not very sensitive to the initial wet size. The response time scale is really small. It's, I think, a fraction of second or 1 or 2 seconds, I think.
The time scale has to be very small. I agree, but if we inject a lot of aerosol particles, then of course the injection of liquid water should have some impact on the result, isn't it? Or is it still too small?
I've calculated liquid water, including all particles, and it doesn't seem to make a difference, at least in the calculations I did. So, I mean, including aerosols. So,
thank you.
Yeah, Silvio just made a comment that his liquid water content is only include droplets. So anything radius less than 1.5 micron are not considered. So it could be the haze particles are being not considered in that case.
Yeah, for that size cutoff, it could be.
Yeah, in my case, I also include all the particles, which still give me the lowest liquid water content of all cases.
Okay. Yeah, Raymond, I spotlight you if you have a question.
Unmute yourself. Oh, there you
are. Yeah, not a question, just a quick comment that in the actual experiments, we inject dry salt particles. But we could do both. We could activate them, we could hydrate them first and then inject, or we could inject them as dry.
Yeah, I think from my experience, as long as the initial dry size is very small, it should have very limited impact on the liquid water content from the haze particle. But if we inject really big aerosol, it could drain the water immediately after we inject them, since they have a quite strong solid effect.
We have a question from the chat from Arun Hadi. I think the question is how the behavior of the models is influenced by the time of aerosol injection.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Maybe we can see from the time series of the temperature and QV. You can see, I think all models has a strong response to the temperature when we have when the droplets or aerosols are injected. The temperature increase immediately after the injection, and which will create quite difference in the supersaturation statistics as well. I think Chun Song maybe still have questions. You can, unmute yourself.
I have another question about LWC, the trend. Some models can get a steady state, but some models cannot. What are the reasons? The different model setting?
Yeah, I guess I couldn't answer this question. But for my case, it's pretty much steady state for all the statistics. Maybe the other case member can share their opinion.
I would like to have a comment that it depends on some of the assumptions on how you remove droplets or how you treat the wall effect. And for CC's case, if she used a different type of removal mechanism, the trend will be different. So is that right, CC?
Yeah, definitely. So in my case, I think my removal mechanism is too efficient. Maybe Steve can comment on that. So since I use the full droplet velocity to detect whether droplet will contact with the wall in the top, bottom, and the side from the side. So there will be some assumptions that the droplet will remain the same speed when they are close to the wall, which should be not in the reality. And there will be some wall effect that will reduce droplet velocity that can also reduce the sedimentation speed. And if that effect is considered, I expect the number of droplets as well as the mean radius will increase. But I still think the steady state will still remain the same.
Okay. I disagree with that. Definitely. I mean, the theory I'll show, the steady state conditions depend a lot on your fall velocity.
Yeah, but I think it will reach steady state eventually.
Oh.
I mean, that's what I mean. Sorry about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. We have Tara, hands up, and I spotlight you. Would you unmute yourself, Tara? You need to unmute yourself. Okay.
Hello, CC. I was just looking at the comparisons you have shown, and in the entire case, I think you have done the simulation for the core region, right?
Yeah, only the core region.
But your liquid water content is too low, lowest compared to all other simulations.
Yes, that's it's mainly because of the removal mechanism. So it removes the large droplets too fast.
Okay, but you did that removal. That is what my question is about. Actually, that removal, you are considering the external forcings at the boundaries, or that means the boundary is interactive, or?
No, I did not consider the wall effect in modifying the sedimentation speed. So that's the cause the droplet will move too fast close to the wall in my case. So that's caused the liquid water content too low.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. All right, Raymond, you are spotlighted.
Yeah, I have a question and then a comment. The question is for CC, actually, just as a follow-up to Tara's question about removal rate and the liquid water content. since your simulation is homogeneous isotropic turbulence, I wonder if the lack of a large-scale circulation is playing a role in the sedimentation removal of the particles. If that's true, that would be really an interesting point to explore. Maybe Steve has a comment on that also, because he's looked at droplet growth and sedimentation in the linear eddy model, which I guess would have a similar kind of challenge in terms of representing the large-scale circulation. I don't know if that's playing a significant role. It's just a speculation.
Yeah, this is a good question. I agree that the large-scale circulation will definitely play a role to transport the droplets inside the chamber. So if there are, since I don't have it for the DNS, if the other models show that droplet will tend to accumulate near the wall boundary, then there would certainly be a large effect from the wall that can change the microphysics statistics. Since in my case it's constant forcing to modify the fluctuations in supersaturation, so the droplet experienced a very steady supersaturation fluctuation field as well as the mean field. Yeah, if I can change it to time variant forcing.
CC, I think we need to move on, don't we? Because I still have my presentation. We only have 10 minutes left.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for the reminder. Yeah, so yeah, let's talk about it later. And Steve, you can share your screen.
Okay, I hope people can stick around because I actually have a 25-minute talk prepared, but there are only 10 minutes left, so I'm not sure what I should do. Okay, so what I'll try to do in this talk is synthesize what we've seen so far, and I think this diagram may be perhaps one of the most important, is just to think of how the mean supersaturation and droplet fallout and fluctuating supersaturation all interact. So let's first consider the simple case when the supersaturation is uniform. This is not realistic, as we've seen, but it's a nice case to consider to start with. So in that case, for each particle, its squared radius just grows linearly in time with the proportionality constant, which depends upon the mean supersaturation. And so this diagram below here with the blue dots show particles injected every at equal intervals in time, and they all grow in time linearly, same rate. But then what makes the size distribution have the shape it has is that they fall out randomly. This is because the flow is turbulent and droplets will come near the boundary at basically random times. And so this sort of distribution of droplet lifetimes, when you then average these, all the droplets present at a given time, you get this distribution shown on the right. This is the radius squared distribution. So if we convert it into the radius distribution, it will have a peak at the moderate size. We have a lot of static in the background here. I don't know if we can fix that. Okay, then let's take a more extreme case where we have fluctuations and just follow one particle, because now it's going to not grow uniformly in time. It'll grow, as we see here in the bottom panel. It'll grow for a while as the supersaturation is positive. then it will shrink again and, in fact, deactivate and grow and so on. And then eventually it will fall out. That's the dot at the end. And these are taken from Theo's DNS, showing just one particle. And the supersaturation is on the top. So in this case, you can see that we have particles that contribute to the droplet size distribution over multiple times. And the larger the supersaturation fluctuation, the larger the droplet can grow during that interval, and the wider it'll contribute to the wider droplet size distribution. So this is the other extreme. So we have both of these happening. In fact, as long as we have fallout, we will always have some mean supersaturation, because even if you average the supersaturation falling a droplet over its lifetime, when it falls out, it will have a net positive supersaturation. Okay, I think in the interest of time, I'm going to skip the derivation of the distribution of R squared. You can read about it in the publications, but I'm just going to go to the final equation here and say that we have at the bottom, equation 4, we have growth by condensation, we have fallout, the J is the injection, and then this last term is representing the effects of the fluctuations. In steady state, we can solve that equation, and that comes out to be equation 7 here. So the problem that we have is that this parameter K, which represents the effect of the supersaturation fluctuations, includes a turbulent timescale, most likely the Lagrangian autocorrelation timescale. And so that means that just knowing the supersaturation fluctuations alone do not necessarily tell us how to solve this equation. So it intimately involves the turbulence in this case. If you want to read more on this topic, these series of papers have discussed this. These are the same 3 that Raymond mentioned earlier. Okay, now in the interest of time, I think I probably should skip over some of this, but I just need to say a little bit about it. From that equation, we can derive various properties of the size distribution as a function of supersaturation and that K, that diffusivity of the droplet radius. I have 2 of these distributions shown, 2 of the properties shown here. The solid lines are the mode radius, so the peak of the radius distribution, and you can see how that increases linearly from lower left to upper right. And then the other, the thin lines that are colored, show just an example. This is the relative dispersion. And so as we go from a supersaturation, mean supersaturation dominated regime in the upper left, things are dependent only on the supersaturation, you can see. And in the lower right, they're dominated by the fluctuations. In between, both matter. And that's kind of the story, is that both matter. Both contribute to the droplet size distribution, or the PDF, I should say. To illustrate this, let's just take a cross-section through a case with constant supersaturation but varying droplet diffusivity. Okay, so this is what happens. Same supersaturation, but we have progressively greater and greater fluctuations. as we go to the broader size distributions. If we do the same similar thing, but now keep the fluctuation level constant and change the supersaturation, we also get a change from narrow to broad size distributions. So let's do one final thing. Let's follow a case along a constant mode radius. In this case, as you can see, the mode radius is the same, but the shape changes just slightly. So the point here is that looking at the droplets, the PDF, you cannot easily tell what the various roles are of mean, supersaturation, and fluctuations. They both contribute to the width of the distribution and even produce pretty similar size distributions. In fact, the distributions are very hard to distinguish from laboratory measurements, though, as Raymond showed, with careful measurements, we can make some inferences. Okay, now with that background, let's go to our model results. And this is probably the most important slide. This is showing for each model, for all cases, all injection rates for each model, the standard deviation of the supersaturation, the fluctuations, on one axis, and the mean supersaturation on the other. And these are both based on the Eulerian values. And for most models, they're basically the same as the Lagrangian values in the vicinity of the droplets. So you notice a couple things. Most prominently is that the models inhabit various regions of this space. Some are way out to the right and others close to the left. In any case, this is probably our primary task, is to sort out why we have these various results. We're all using the same equations. Something is different about the model configurations that causes these differences. It would be nice if we knew what the pi chamber, where it was on here, but unfortunately we don't have accurate enough. Let's just say it's difficult to get the mean supersaturation. So it would be really great to know where the pi chamber lies as well along here. Okay, well, we can break that last diagram down into the effects on the mean radius. And the mean radius is a good proxy for the actual width of the distribution because it's basically the same as the mode radius. It's very close. So mean supersaturation versus mean radius. All the models show an increase of mean radius as the mean supersaturation goes up. Some more than others. And likewise, we all see the mean radius going up with the supersaturation fluctuations. Except in the NCAR model, we don't, and that's because the supersaturation fluctuations are prescribed. So on all the other models, the fluctuations evolve from interactions of the flow with the walls and produce these fluctuations. So it is important, it appears, to incorporate the walls if we want to get realistic fluctuations. Okay, we've had some interest in droplet concentration versus mean supersaturation. And we've seen, this is a very characteristic view. This is in log scale. We see that as the mean supersaturation, well, as the droplet concentration increases, the mean supersaturation goes down. And similarly, for the standard deviation. I mean, I think you can, obviously, the the mean and the standard deviation of the supersaturations are relatively correlated. Okay, at the last ICMW workshop, the first preliminary one we had in November of last year, we wondered if we should be looking at the supersaturation at the droplets. I mean, the supersaturation in the environment of the droplets, which is what is used for the droplet growth equation, not at the surface of the droplet, but the far field for the droplet. And it turns out that except for one model, that the two are very close. I mean, they're essentially identical. And same for the supersaturation fluctuations, except for there are these two outliers here. And I suspect that this, I'm not sure, I suspect that this may be due to the analysis, not actually what goes on in the model. So that should be checked. Okay, you've all seen the distributions before, and I'm gonna skip through these relatively quickly since you've already seen these. These are just an example from University of Notre Dame showing how the distribution narrows as the injection rate goes up. And same for the other models. We've seen these, so I'll skip through these. Okay, and this topic is something which I will just briefly mention. I went through it quite a bit of detail last time. It would be great to be able to infer the supersaturation from measurements of the droplet size distribution. And theoretically, it is possible if we take two measures of the distribution that are nearly orthogonal on this plot, then we should be able to infer both the supersaturation and that K value, that diffusivity of the droplet radius. Okay, this theory is based on droplet size distributions that do not take into account the effects of the solute and curvature effects for the small droplets. And it turns out that does make a difference. As you can see here, the red lines are the theoretical distributions without those effects taken into account, and you can see the differences at the small radius, and they even propagate to the large radius. So that theory is a bit more complicated, and we have made some progress on that. Okay, now there is encouragement because even without the inclusion of those curvature and solute effects, we do get a very good correlation with our retrieved or diagnosed supersaturations. The correlation is almost perfect, but there's an offset. So there is optimism for that. Okay, so conclusions. Each model inhabits different regions of our mean and fluctuation space. Suggests that different model configurations produce this behavior. That's sort of an obvious conclusion. It would be interesting to know what regions the pi chamber inhabits. These are positively correlated for each model. And for these runs, the Eulerian and Lagrangian values of the supersaturation generally differ a little. And that's important because the theory applies to Lagrangian values. The results generally appear to be consistent with the theory of DSDs affected by both mean and fluctuating supersaturation. In nearly all models, both mean and fluctuating supersaturations are important, and neither dominates. all models exhibit consistency with the expected ranges of the moment ratios. I didn't go into that in detail, but it's a good test for the models. Well, one test is if you look at your relative dispersion, it should be within a small range. Okay, this one's a little bit long. I just mentioned that. I'm not going to go over that. These are some technical details on the retrieving supersaturation. We should include the effects of solute curvature. Specifying, I'm going to go on. I covered that in enough detail. Specifying the fluctuating supersaturation is done by CC, offers a controlled simulation approach, which I think should be pursued. And the processes that determine all of these, and hence the DSD, remain poorly quantified in simulations and measurements. I think we just need to look at more stuff. And so here are my suggestions for future work. I added several of these after Raymond's talk this morning. I think we should look at the role of large-scale circulations in the 3D models. We should also quantify the simulated fluxes. This is an aspect of the model configurations. We should probably look at should compare the no droplet simulated states more carefully. We can group the DSD regimes into those identified by Raymond and colleagues by low droplet number, moderate, and high droplet number states. I found it very helpful in looking at the Lagrangian droplet histories from Theo's DNS for analysis and understanding. And I think we should, and in fact, number 4 motivates investigating the role of reactivation in the case where we have fluctuations. Okay, sorry for the rush, but I think I cut 5 minutes off or something.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you everyone for staying around, and we are a little bit over time due to some technical difficulties. Before we close today's discussion, before Raymond is gone, I would like him to say a little bit about how the observations, the chamber observations, can be more closely combined with our modeling activity. Raymond, if you're still there, would you unmute yourself? I already spotlight you.
Yes, I'm still here. You hear me, Lulin?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, I had asked if I could just make a quick comment, and Steve did a great job of bringing this up. It would be very useful for us. I would say one of the key takeaways from this Pi chain modeling case would be to receive feedback from all of you who have worked so hard in simulating the Pi chamber, and you've thought carefully about the questions you have about boundary conditions, about aerosol injection, about removal, and so forth. It would be really useful for us to hear your feedback regarding what measurements would be the most useful in constraining both, well, I should say in setting up the model and in constraining the output of the model or evaluating the output of the model. So for example, Steve showed we can look at different moments of the droplet size distributions, although surprisingly, as Steve mentioned, it's pretty subtle to get at whether the supersaturation fluctuations or the mean are dominating the system. But maybe there are other measures even before we get that level of subtlety. One thing that I took away from the earlier discussion is that even just measurements of water content as a function of injection might be useful in evaluating what fluxes we have and what supersaturation state we have in the model.
Yeah.
So receiving that kind of feedback from you would be extremely useful.
Great. Steve, do you have any comments?
Oh, just in a second. The liquid water content is a very sensitive. It's a very tough one to get, and it's actually there's some. It seems to be it's very difficult to get agreement with it with the measurements on that.
And of course, it's not that easy to measure either. But I think it's easier to measure than supersaturation. That's for sure.
Yeah. Was it able to retrieve the droplet size distribution from pi chamber measurements?
Yes, we have droplet size distributions. We have a few different instruments that can do that. Of course, the reality with any instrument is they operate in size ranges. So, the paper I cited by Kamal from 2016, it was measuring roughly from, let's say, 4 microns and above. The paper that I cited from the two papers from Prashant and from Shawan, those were using an instrument that can look at the haze particles, but then its response sort of falls off and it can't really reliably measure droplets above, say, diameter 20 microns. So there's no instrument, but we can do our best. And knowing what we're going to compare against in the model output will be helpful in us deciding what measurements to use.
Yeah, as you have showed in your morning talk that the droplet size distribution varies in different regimes. So it would be very interesting to compare the real measurements with the models, whether they can catch those features in different supersaturation region.
WeChat, raise your hand. I spotlight you, and you can unmute yourself.
Yes, I did unmute myself. So I have a quick comment and a very general comment, mostly for Tara. So the quick comment, in my simulations that I didn't repeat it according to the prescriptions just published last year. The difference in liquid water, my explanation was that could be explained just by different levels of mean supersaturation. That was my conclusion. So that's a comment kind of following the discussion. Now, the very general comment is mostly for Tara. We had troubles with 100 people, and in view of next week meeting that we expect several hundred of people attending, I think the team, the local organizing committee should look very carefully at the limitations that we kind of came across today, because if we have trouble with 105 people, imagine what will happen if we have 350 people attending. So, Tara, I'm not sure whether you are around, but this is for you. The ball is in your court. That has to be corrected, changed, whatever needs to be done to accommodate that. So this is my very general comment at the end of the day today. And I really like the discussions and the talks. So great day. I'm looking forward for tomorrow and the days after. Thank you much.
Thank you, Wojtek. That will be on a different platform. The ICCP conference will be on a different platform. We were not expecting so many people here.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. Sorry. So my comment is just not realizing the reality. Okay. Thank you, Tara.
Chunzong, I spotlight you, and after Chunzong, we probably should conclude today. So, Chunzong, you are the last one to ask question.
Okay, thank you. Actually, I have a question for Steve. You showed a figure for think about supersaturation versus mean supersaturation. Mean supersaturation versus fluctuation of droplet, right?
Say that again. Which one?
Yeah, this one, yeah. The first one. Yeah, this one.
Here? No.
The one before. Yeah,
oh,
here.
One of these?
Yeah.
Oh.
So what are the lines? I don't quite understand the lines. What do the lines represent? The contour.
Okay. Let me just go back to here. So this is the general PDF for the droplet radius squared. And it depends upon this spectral diffusivity K. And then these other, the parameter B depends upon the supersaturation. So once you have a PDF, then you can get various moments from it, whatever you want. And these are, the lines are two properties or moments of that distribution as a function of the supersaturation and that droplet diffusivity. So one is the mode radius, that's in the solid lines, and the other, all these little thin lines, is the relative dispersion.
Okay, I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Stephen, especially Stephen CC, for your great leading the discussion. And everybody, you're welcome to hang around. This platform is open 7/24, so you are welcome to visit the poster today or anytime. And then next, when we have the presenter by the poster next time, then you can ask questions. And Steve and Cece, I would like to ask you to summarize some of the discussion point and some of the important future direction and kind of the plans, so that we can have some discussions on Friday to summarize all these important points.
Oh,
and yeah,
sure,
sure.
We should submit that to you.
Or
we do it ourselves.
Friday we will discuss together. So.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we'll do that.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you very much. And Tara, do you have anything wants to say before we close today's discussion? You're muted.
Sorry, it toggles a little bit. Sorry about all the disturbances we had. Actually, we expected much less number of people, so it was above 100. And if it is happening tomorrow like this, we can even within this system itself, we can put the teams and switch over to that very easily and stream it through the YouTube. So I leave it to Lulin to decide on that, and we can set up teams as well.
All right. I think we'll probably still use the current GetterTown platform. If we do get more than 100, and we'll try your method then. But if we have like less than 100 at a time, and then we'll keep going this way. I think the platform works well, and when it's less than 100 people. And thank you for all the help in organizing this venue. So we'll see everybody tomorrow for another interesting case discussion. And with that, wish everybody a great day, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
By the way, thanks to Harish and Sandeep for the technical support. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, for the one who wants to discuss more, you're welcome to use the breakout room for case 1 or the Pi chamber case, and people can hang around there. Thank you.
Yes.
Kumar.
Hello.
Yes, Sandeep. Okay.
Yeah, Lulin sir, we have already also placed one document, so people can post their question in that Google Doc. You see, at each place we post one document, right? You see.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, if you press X, then people can ask their question.
I see. I see.
So if the presenter is not available at that place, yeah.
Okay, this is an interesting feature that I haven't found yet, but yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Maybe during our next day, yeah, today, if you can hang around a little bit more and then let people know the function.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have already posted that in that chat box. So I already wrote that people can ask, post their question in that Google Doc.
Okay, good.
Yes.
Oh, by the way, Harish and Sandy, are we able to save all the chats?
Okay, not all chats.
As of now, hello.
Yeah.
As of now, we have a chat save option.
Okay.
So I'll try to retrieve it. I'll let you know.
Okay, that's good. We'd like to keep all the discussions and all the questions in place. I kind of do a manual copying them into a document, but if the platform has the save feature, that would be great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And actually, sir, we also noticed that many people from ICCP actually came on this workshop.
Right. I think Tara did a great job advertising our workshop, so we do get more than
more than 100.
we can handle. Yeah, more than we can handle. But it's great. I think. But it's a little bit unfortunate for those that beyond 100 that kind of have suffered that difficulty.
Yeah, but this platform is working very nice actually for 100 people, and it's we find it very exciting. I don't know for other people.
Yeah, it's good. It's kind of really similar to the real experience.
Yeah. Yes.
And really help people kind of get together.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Harish and Sandeep. I will log out and
okay.
We'll see you tomorrow. I'll log in probably 15 minutes before the actual meeting.
Yeah.
So if we have any things wants to update or discuss, then we can use that 15 minutes to go over them.
Yeah.
Yes.
We can, I don't know where we should meet, but maybe in the cafeteria. Agent?
Sure.
Yes, sure. We shall meet there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Let's meet
good.
tomorrow in the cafeteria and get some feedbacks from what you have learned or heard from this after this discussion. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Good.
Great.
That sounds
Thank
good.
you. Then I'll log
Thank you.
out and see you.
Have a good day.
Bye.
Have a good day, sir.
Bye.